Chapter 943. One of the most important signs of a practitioner achieving the Dharma stage was the awakening of spatial powers. Lu Ping could clearly feel that as the dragon Dharma power circled in the sky, his divine will could instantly spread out nearly 30 miles from the peak of Fei Ling Mountain. There was a saying in the world of practitioners, summon the spirit with one's body. It actually meant that a great adept who had reached the late Dharma stage could easily control everything within a 30-mile radius. Within this 30-mile radius, almost no one could escape the pursuit of a great adept. A great Dharma adept could easily decide the life and death of a person. The 30-mile radius of his divine will was the hallmark of a great Dharma adept, and it was also the furthest range that a great Dharma adept's spatial powers could reach. Lu Ping's level of practice was naturally far below that of a late Dharma adept, but his divine will could actually sense everything within a 30-mile radius through his Dharma power. Lu Ping could even feel that if he wanted to, he could use his spatial powers to appear anywhere within a 30-mile radius. It was just that on the peak of Fei Ling Mountain, Lu Ping did not dare to use his spatial powers carelessly. When Fei Ling Island had sunk to the bottom of the sea, it had caused the entire island's space to shatter, break, collapse, and other such spatial traps. Previously, Lu Ping could only roughly sense these dangerous areas, but now, he could clearly sense any spatial trap within a 30-mile radius through his divine will. As the dragon Dharma power circled the peak of Fei Ling Mountain, there were always a number of powerful talismans circling around the Dharma power. When a Dharma power was first formed, the talismans would be attracted by the origin essence, and this was the best opportunity to form his own special powers. If the Dharma power fell into the core space, these talismans that Lu Ping had painstakingly formed would once again be converted into essential inner yuan essence for the Dharma power to absorb. In the end, all they could do was increase Lu Ping's level of practice by a tiny bit. With a thought, Lu Ping's dragon Dharma power turned around and swung its tail, wrapping all the talismans together. The golden eyes of the dragon Dharma power suddenly opened, and a ray of golden light shone on one of the talismans. This talisman instantly flashed with a golden light, and the inscriptions on the surface of the talisman began to flash one by one. The dragon Dharma power spat out a gust of essential essence, which formed a blue dragon ball in midair. The talisman flickered and stuck itself onto the surface of the dragon ball. The inscriptions on the talisman lit up one by one, imprinting themselves onto the surface of the dragon ball. One after another, until the 7th talisman pattern appeared. Suddenly, the talisman pattern began to flicker. Lu Ping furrowed his brows and watched as the talisman suddenly fell off the surface of the dragon pearl. The 6 talisman patterns that were previously imprinted on the dragon pearl also disappeared. The dragon Dharma power opened its mouth and inhaled, and the dragon ball turned back into essential essence and was swallowed by the Dharma power. At the same time, the talisman that was condensed from Lu Ping's true essence also dispersed into essential essence, and was swallowed by the dragon Dharma power. This was the waterspout that Lu Ping had condensed. In the past, his teacher, Lu Tianling, Laozu, had relied on this great spell to dominate the North Sea when he was still at the core forging stage. Who would have thought that Lu Ping's first attempt to condense the seed of this spell would end in failure? However, the talisman was condensed from the essence of Lu Ping's true essence. Even if it couldn't become a life-bonded great spell, it could still be used to increase one's cultivation. Although this kind of increase was negligible for Lu Ping, it was still better than nothing. However, condensing the talisman did not mean that one could successfully condense the seed of the spell and become a life-bonded great spell. The talisman that Lu Ping had condensed in the core space over the years was far from this type of talisman. It wasn't as if Lu Ping didn't have the opportunity to condense another life-bonded great spell. Lu Ping's divine sense pointed into the distance. The dragon Dharma power turned around and once again produced a dragon ball condensed from essential essence. The talisman transformed from the invisible sword stuck to the dragon ball. Lines of inscriptions began to be imprinted on the dragon ball. In the end, all 9 inscriptions were successfully imprinted, and the talisman completely integrated into the dragon ball. The dragon Dharma power seemed to sense that the seed imprinted with the talisman would bring great benefits to it, It shook its head and wagged its tail, as if celebrating something. Then, it swallowed the dragon ball into its stomach. Immediately after, Lu Ping saw that on the reverse scale below the dragon Dharma Power's neck, one of the broken inscriptions that had swallowed the 9 broken inscriptions of the golden core began to slowly repair itself. For a core forging stage cultivator to successfully form a top-grade golden core, it not only meant that they would be able to successfully advance to the transcendent stage. At the same time, it also meant that after advancing to the transcendent stage, a third meaning was that the surface of the golden core marked the number of inscriptions that would appear. This usually indicated the maximum number of life-bonded great spells that a cultivator could condense after advancing to the transcendent stage. In other words, a cultivator would need to have at least a 7th grade golden core in order to advance to the transcendent stage. A cultivator in the transcendent stage could at most condense 7 life-bonded great spells. An 8th grade golden core could condense 8 life-bonded great spells, and a 9th grade golden core could condense a maximum of 9 life-bonded great spells. Lu Ping's heart leaped with joy. If a transcendent stage cultivator could condense 1 life-bonded great spell, he would be able to stand out among the cultivators of the same stage. What Lu Ping was worried about was whether he would be able to condense 1 life-bonded great spell. As long as he could condense 1 life-bonded great spell seed, with Lu Ping's ability, he would not be afraid even if he met a transcendence adept who had condensed 2 or 3 life-bonded great spells. Now that Lu Ping could condense 1 life-bonded great spell seed, he could rest easy. What was left was just a matter of how many life-bonded great spells he could condense. Furthermore, the Shapeless Sword spell was one of the most unique great spells. Its power did not lie in the power of the sword technique itself, but in the word, shapeless. After condensing it into a life-bonded great spell, the power of the Shapeless Sword spell would increase. In addition, Lu Ping had obtained the complete method of refining the Shapeless Sword spell. Just this spell alone would be comparable to other Transcendence adepts condensing 2 or 3 life-bonded great spells. The 3rd life-bonded great spell talisman condensed the great spell, the Flying Spiral Serial Kill. This was also a sword technique spell, and it was one of the 4 basic great spells of the Boiling Sky Supreme Sword technique. In order to achieve the Boiling Sky Supreme Sword technique, one would first have to refine the 4 basic great spells into a life-bonded great spell. It was a pity that this great spell that Lu Ping had first mastered was not able to condense into a life-bonded great spell seed. Instead, the talisman condensed from the 4th sword technique spell, the Seeping Water Sword technique, was successfully imprinted on the Dragon Pearl. After the Dharma Power swallowed the Dragon Pearl, the 2nd seal on the reverse scale was also repaired by the seal formed by the Seeping Water Sword technique, becoming Lu Ping's 2nd life-bonded great spell. The 5th life-bonded great spell talisman was the Water Divine Thunder spell that Lu Ping had recently mastered. Perhaps it was because Lu Ping had condensed the Water of Calamity Thunder, but the inscription of this talisman was unusually smooth. Very quickly, the 3rd life-bonded great spell seed condensed from the essence was also swallowed by the Dharma Power, and the 3rd seal on the reverse scale also began to be repaired. The 6th spell that Lu Ping had condensed was the Water Curtain Heaven spell. This was a protective great spell that Lu Ping had condensed from 9 layers of Shield of Vigor. It was a pity that the Dharma Power did not even care about this spell talisman, and directly shattered it, swallowing the essence of the vital essence condensed from the talisman. The last 2 remaining magical spell talismans were the Sea of All Rivers Divine Art and the Sea of Mulberry Fields spell. These were originally the 12 orthodox defensive spells of the North Sea Wave Listening technique. These were the spells that Lu Ping had truly used to condense his own great magical power. However, these 12 spells had undergone a mutation when Lu Ping had advanced to the peak of the core forging realm. The 6 magical spells of the Sea of All Rivers Divine Art had condensed into 1 complete magical spell talisman, while the other 6 magical spells of the Sea of Mulberry Fields spell had condensed into another complete magical spell talisman, using the Sea of All Rivers Divine Art as the center. These 2 talismans had become a whole, and the 6 magical spells condensed into 1 did not affect the performance of each of them. Just like the branches of a tree, Any branch that was broken off and planted in the soil could also grow into a towering tree, and when the branches were condensed together, it would still be a tree. The two magical spell talismans formed by the Sea of All Rivers divine art were like two towering trees. Lu Ping thought for a moment and decided to first inscribe the seed of the Sea of All Rivers divine art. However, after the seed was condensed from the essence of the Sea of All Rivers divine art, Lu Ping discovered that the Sea of All Rivers divine art had much more runes than the other magical spell talismans. It was to the point that the Dragon Ball condensed from the essence of the Sea of All Rivers divine art couldn't withstand it. At this time, the Dragon Law Idol suddenly became extremely excited. It opened its huge mouth and a small column of essence of the Dragon Ball shot out from its mouth. The essence of the Dragon Law Idol continuously poured into the Dragon Ball. The volume of the Dragon Ball didn't increase in the slightest, but the runes that were originally inscribed on the surface of the Dragon Ball were constantly shrinking. Only when all the runes in the magical spell talisman had been inscribed on the surface of the Dragon Ball did the Dragon Law Idol stop injecting the essence of the Dragon Ball. There were a total of 81 runes. Originally, a divine art talisman would only have 9 runes. Could it be because this magical spell talisman had condensed 6 sword techniques? Under Lu Ping's puzzled and seemingly enlightened gaze, the Dragon Law Idol didn't immediately swallow the Dragon Ball into its abdomen. Instead, it excitedly circled around the Dragon Ball. Then, it swallowed the Dragon Ball into its abdomen with a solemn attitude that was somewhat unbelievable to Lu Ping. Under Lu Ping's expectant gaze, the Dragon Law Idol suddenly let out a loud dragon roar after swallowing the Dragon Ball into its abdomen. The fine golden scales all over its body suddenly exploded, and a fine sword aura shot out from the 129,600 exploded scales. The entire Failing Mountain was covered by the fine sword aura. Lu Ping was shocked. The Dragon Law Idol was closely related to Lu Ping. Lu Ping could clearly sense that if this sword aura was allowed to wreak havoc, most of the entire Failing Mountain would be destroyed in this sword aura. Fortunately, Lu Ping's natal gentian array was still shrouding the top of Failing Mountain. Under the command of Lu Ping's divine thought, the natal gentian array was immediately launched, shrouding the 120,000 sword aura. Fortunately, this sword chi had the same origin as the Yuanshan Grand Array. When the sword chi scattered on the protective barrier of the Yuanshan Grand Array, it immediately melted. Then, it turned into surging quintessential essence and was absorbed by the Yuanshan Grand Array. Then, countless changes began to occur on the 12 Yuanshan beads and the White Lotus Array diagram. However, Lu Ping couldn't care about the Gentian Array at this time, because something that made him incredibly excited happened. Chapter 944. Who could directly achieve a supreme power when they advanced to the Dharma form stage? In any case, Lu Ping himself had never heard of such a thing in the cultivation world, but it had happened to Lu Ping. After the Sea of Hundred Rivers sword art, which was originally formed from the 6 Paths talisman charms, was imprinted on the Sea of Hundred Rivers sword art, and absorbed by his avatar, it almost caused Lu Ping's avatar to fall into chaos. Fortunately, Lu Ping reacted in time. The sword chi that shot out was of the same origin, and the natal gentian formation had extraordinary power. This allowed Lu Ping to completely block the 120,000 sword chi that shot out. Otherwise, who knew how much of Fei Ling Mountain would have been completely destroyed. However, it was also because of this burst of sword chi that Lu Ping could finally confirm that after the Sea of All Rivers sword technique was condensed into a magical power seed by the Dharma form, it had actually been pushed all the way to the level of a supreme power. At this moment, Lu Ping's mood could be said to be both nervous and pleasantly surprised. His eyes were fixed on the reverse scale below the Dharma form's neck. The 4th talisman pattern was slowly being repaired. This 4th talisman marking was obviously extremely different from the previous 3 talisman markings. After the talisman marking was completely repaired, there were still other talisman markings that appeared and fused with this talisman marking, causing this talisman marking to seem even more resplendent, and it was even to the extent that the previous 3 talisman markings that had taken form were completely overshadowed by this talisman marking. The Dharma form of the dragon was shrinking rapidly. Perhaps it was because the Dharma form of the dragon used its origin essence to condense a magical power seed. Every time Lu Ping successfully condensed a magical power seed, the Dharma form of the dragon would shrink by a foot. However, after the Sea of All Rivers sword technique was successfully condensed, the Dharma form of the dragon had shrunk by more than 3 feet. Although the sword technique of the Sea of All Rivers sword technique made Lu Ping very happy, Lu Ping had some other worries at this time. Just as the number of natal great powers condensed was affected by the grade of the golden elixir, in fact, the number of supreme great powers condensed was also affected by the grade of the golden elixir. Usually, a core forging adept with a 7th grade Dan could only condense 1 supreme great power out of the 7 natal great powers, but this was only a possibility. It was already extremely difficult for a normal adept to condense 1 supreme great power, let alone condensing a few. Most early Dharma adepts could not condense a supreme great power in their entire lives. On the other hand, a cultivator who had an 8th grade Dan and advanced to the Dharma phase would naturally be able to condense 2 supreme powers. Similarly, a cultivator who had a 9th grade Dan and advanced to the Dharma phase would at most be able to condense 3 supreme powers. Usually, the formation of a supreme great power was formed from several great spells as the foundation of the supreme great powers, and then successfully condensed the supreme great powers. Just as the 100 Rivers sword technique supreme great powers was originally formed from the combination of 6 great sword techniques, the Boiling Sky sword technique supreme great powers was formed from the combination of 4 great sword techniques, the Seeping Water sword technique, the Flying Spiral Chain Slash, and the other 3 great sword techniques, and Tianlin Laozu's supreme great powers, Falling Flowers, was also formed from the combination of 5 great spells, including the 10,000 Forms Forest Wall. Usually, if a practitioner wanted to condense a supreme great power, they would first need to condense a few of the basic supreme great powers into the seed of the supreme great powers. And due to the influence of the grade of the golden elixir before the cultivator advanced to the Dharma form, a practitioner could at most condense 9 supreme great powers, and this would take up a cultivator's originally few golden elixir runes. Once these few golden elixir runes were combined and condensed into a supreme great power, these few golden elixir runes that were repaired by the golden elixir runes would completely disappear, and a brand new supreme great power rune would be condensed. Usually, when a cultivator condensed a supreme great power, they had to be meticulous because every supreme great power required at least 3 or more supreme great powers as the foundation. Some powerful supreme great powers even required 4 or 5 foundation great powers to be successfully condensed. Therefore, after a cultivator advanced to the Dharma form stage, they had to be meticulous about the opportunity to condense 9 supreme great powers, so that they could have the opportunity to condense 1 or 2 supreme great powers. This was what Lu Ping was worried about. Previously, he had already condensed 3 golden elixir runes and had already occupied 3 golden elixir runes. After the 100 Rivers into the Sea sword technique was directly promoted to a supreme great power, Lu Ping then remembered that the 100 Rivers into the Sea sword technique was condensed from 6 supreme great powers. According to the usual pattern of a cultivator promoting a supreme divine ability, wouldn't that mean that after the Sea of 100 Rivers sword art was promoted to the level of a supreme divine ability, the remaining 6 golden core runes on the reverse scale had already been completely occupied by the 6 great divine abilities that made up the supreme divine ability? In this case, didn't that mean that Lu Ping no longer had any golden elixir runes to endure the condensation of the other supreme great powers? Lu Ping tried his best to look at the golden light on the reverse scale. However, even though green light flickered in Lu Ping's eyes, he still couldn't see through the layer of golden light. Just as Lu Ping appeared to be deeply worried, the 4th golden elixir rune condensed and strengthened by the supreme great powers was finally completed. Lu Ping couldn't wait to look at the reverse scale. When he saw that there were still 5 broken golden elixir runes after the 4th supreme great power seed rune, he heaved a sigh of relief. Lu Ping still had the opportunity to condense his natural great powers. Could it be that before condensing his natural great powers, he could condense the foundation supreme great powers into a complete supreme great power talisman? In this way, he could avoid wasting the few golden elixir runes? Wouldn't that mean that Lu Ping could continue to use the saved golden elixir runes to condense his natural great powers? He might even have the opportunity to condense the fourth or even the fifth natural great powers, breaking the rule that a cultivator could only condense 3 natural great powers at most. Lu Ping's heart was burning with passion. He couldn't help but look at the last new Supreme Great Powers talisman that was also condensed from 6 Supreme Great Powers, the art of changing seas and mulberry fields. This time, Lu Ping had learned his lesson. When the Dharma form of the dragon used the origin essence to condense the dragon ball, it didn't stop the continuous input of the origin essence. Therefore, although the art of changing seas and mulberry fields took a long time to inscribe, there were no problems along the way. When the Supreme Great Powers finished inscribing the seed, the Dharma form of the dragon, which had shrunk by 3 feet, opened its mouth and swallowed the seed. The natural gentian formation was ready, but he saw a flowing light appear around the body of the Dharma form, and after a cycle, the water disappeared. Lu Ping was stunned. He didn't expect such a situation. When he turned to look again, the reverse scale under the Dharma form's neck was flashing with a warm light, and the 5th golden elixir rune had begun to repair. At the same time, the Dharma form of the dragon, which had shrunk by 3 feet due to condensing the art of changing seas and mulberry fields, suddenly grew by 3 feet. Lu Ping thought of the 120,000 sword cheese that had burst out when he condensed the Sea of 100 Rivers sword art. If he had been prepared at that time and could have digested the 120,000 sword cheese in the body of the Dharma form, perhaps the Dharma form of the dragon could have grown by 3 feet. The warm light dissipated, and the broken 5th golden elixir rune on the silver-white reverse scale had been repaired and strengthened. It was almost the same size as the 4th golden elixir rune, and there were still 4 broken golden elixir runes on the reverse scale, waiting for Lu Ping to condense his natural great powers in the future. 3 natural great powers, 2 natural supreme great powers, and a cultivator who had just advanced to the Dharma form stage. If word of this got out, the shock to the cultivation world would be no less than the thousandly celestial phenomenon caused by Lu Ping's advancement to the Dharma form stage. Lu Ping couldn't wait to take out a few of his natural great powers to practice on the spot, but Failing Mountain was really not a good place to practice his natural great powers. It was a small matter to destroy such a lively training ground, but looking at the space traps hidden in the void, if they caused the space of the training ground to collapse or the formation to fail, and the 90,000 feet deep seawater above his head to pour down, then Lu Ping's little life would really be forfeit. Lu Ping calmed his mind, and at this moment, he suddenly noticed that the natural gentian great formation that appeared along with the Dharma form of the dragon had changed. Just as Lu Ping's Dharma form of the dragon swallowed the 7 large spirit veins that were imprisoned in the sky above Failing Island, the natural gentian treasures that were connected to Lu Ping's mind were the first to benefit. Runes began to form on the surface of the white jade lotus, and then the colorful light on the surface of the 12 gentian pearls began to expand and contract. Especially after Lu Ping's Dharma form of the dragon swallowed the 120,000 sword chi condensed from the original essence of the Dharma form of the dragon, the changes of the 13 natural great treasures became even more intense. Lu Ping opened his mouth and inhaled, and the huge Dharma form of the dragon immediately shrank to the size of a foot and disappeared into Lu Ping's mouth. In the core space, the 13 natural gentian treasures each shot out 13 beams of light, which connected with the Dharma form of the dragon in the center. As the true essence of the dragon swallowed and spat out by the Dharma form, each formed a cycle, and the speed at which the runes formed on the surface of the natural great treasures increased again. The first to be completed was the white jade lotus that the Dharma form had used as a foothold. Perhaps because it was close to the Dharma form, the large amount of original essence that the Dharma form had swallowed and spat out benefited the white jade lotus first. Countless runes finally formed a complete spirit-nurturing treasure, condensing at the core of the white jade lotus. The white jade lotus had become a spirit-nurturing treasure that had condensed 8 spirit-nurturing treasures. Immediately after, the 12 gentian pearls changed one after another. Mysterious runes streaked across the surface of the gentian pearls, but they were quickly covered by the colorful light emitted by the gentian pearls. Majestic auras appeared on the 12 gentian pearls one after another, and they also became 12 spirit-nurturing treasures that had condensed 8 spirit-nurturing treasures. Just as the whole gentian great formation was upgraded by one level, the Dharma form of the dragon suddenly rose from the white jade lotus, and the white lotus pattern bloomed again. The 12 gentian pearls returned to their respective positions, and the gentian great formation was once again opened under the control of the Dharma form of the gentian great formation. The spirit chi that had been absorbed by the Dharma form of the flying spirit mountain had begun to slowly recover after being replenished by the 7 spirit veins. Lu Ping took a deep breath. Although the Dharma form had been formed, his cultivation had not been consolidated. This was not the time to be complacent, but to continue to cultivate in seclusion and consolidate his cultivation. Chapter 945. Even Lu Ping himself didn't know how long it took for Lu Ping to break through to the Dharma manifestation stage. In short, when he opened his eyes again, he only saw De Bao, who had advanced to the middle stage of core forging. De Bao, how long has it been? De Bao said with a sad face, "Boss, you have been in closed-door training for 3 years since you broke through to the Dharma manifestation stage." Lu Ping asked curiously, "It's only 3 years. It's not a big deal." De Bao said with a sad face, "But boss, do you know that we spent at least 1 year in a coma, and another year in a coma? The other year, we cultivated in fear under the pressure of the bloodline from time to time. Only in the last year did the top of Failing Mountain completely calm down. I dared to come to the top to see you, but Lu Xiaohai didn't dare to step on the top of the mountain." Sister Xylan also hid with her bees. Seeing the strange look on Lu Ping's face, De Bao's face became even more bitter. During the process of Lu Ping's advancement to the Dharma manifestation stage and condensing the magical seed, the whole Failing Mountain was shrouded in the huge pressure of the Dragon Dharma manifestation. Not to mention a low-level demon like De Bao, even a top-level demon like Lu Xiaohai, the direct descendant of Taoist Hu, could not resist the majestic dragon power. After that, Lu Ping began to consolidate his cultivation in closed-door training. But because Lu Ping's cultivation had just broken through, he could not completely control his own situation, which led to Lu Ping's breath always in a state of instability. The huge pressure on the top of Failing Mountain was sometimes restrained and sometimes released, which made De Bao, Lu Xiaohai, and the purple crystal bees always in a state of fear. The purple crystal bee king simply took the remaining 1/10 of the bees all the way out of Failing Mountain, hundreds of miles away from Failing Mountain. It was not until a year later that Lu Ping's cultivation began to gradually stabilize, and his breath began to slowly calm down and gradually converge. The top of Failing Mountain finally returned to peace. But Lu Xiaohai still did not dare to go to the top of the mountain to investigate. The purple crystal bees were resting, and De Bao was worried, so he went to the top of the mountain alone. At this time, Lu Ping frowned as he looked at De Bao from head to toe. De Bao felt like Lu Ping's gaze was like a pair of sharp blades that could pierce into his body. De Bao couldn't help but shiver in fear. Lu Ping's gaze was like a pair of sharp blades that could pierce into his body. "You smelted the black jade stone." Lu Ping looked at De Bao with some displeasure. The black jade stone was only a mystic class upper grade earth attribute spirit item. Although De Bao had smelted 2 of it, it was his first time smelting a heaven and earth spirit item, and it was only a mystic class spirit item. His foundation was still weak. De Bao complained incessantly, "Boss, how can it be so easy to smelt a heaven and earth spirit item? Besides, no one will give me spirit forging pills to eat when you go into seclusion. Even if I want to smelt a low-grade earth spirit item, I won't be able to do it." De Bao actually had some low-grade spirit pills on him, but it was obvious that he had his eyes on the spirit forging pills. Not to mention, the effects of using a spirit forging pill on his first time smelting a heaven and earth spirit item were not very good. Moreover, De Bao's aptitude was too low. Even if Lu Ping used a secret technique to disperse De Bao's cultivation and let him recultivate, the most he could do was raise De Bao's aptitude to the level of a mid-grade demon in a short period of time. To be able to smelt 2 mystic-class upper-grade spirit items was already quite an achievement. Besides, even in Jinling, being able to smelt a mystic-class upper-grade heaven and earth spirit item when advancing to the mid-grade core forging realm is already very good. De Bao had managed the underground auction house on Huangli Island and had handled a lot of treasures. He knew a lot about the situation of Jinling's core forging realm cultivators. Although Jinling already had more than 300 core forging realm cultivators, more than half of them were early core forging realm cultivators. More than half of these early core forging realm cultivators had yet to obtain a heaven and earth spirit item to advance to the mid-grade core forging realm. At least 1/3 of them had prepared a mystic class heaven and earth spirit item to advance to the mid-grade core forging realm. Only a few of them had extravagant hopes of obtaining a better heaven and earth spirit item. Among the nearly 100 mid-stage core forging cultivators of Zhenling sect, more than half of them had only advanced to the late-stage core forging realm after refining a profound grade spirit item. Most of them had already lost the opportunity to advance to the late-stage core forging realm. Lu Ping fiercely glared at De Bao, scaring De Bao into silence. He didn't dare to say another word. Lu Ping pondered for a moment, then sighed and said, "Since it's like this, you just have to work hard on your cultivation. However, don't be in a hurry to improve your cultivation. Instead, focus on building a solid foundation. A high-grade heaven and earth spirit item will at least keep your hope of advancing to the transcendence realm. If you have the help of the spirit forging pill in the future, you might even have a chance of refining 2 low-grade heaven and earth spirit items." De Bao laughed mischievously and said, "Boss, I'm just an ordinary spirit-seeking mouse. To be able to reach this point in the spirit-seeking mouse clan, I've already earned enough. Now that I can even keep my hope of advancing to the transcendence realm, you don't have to worry about me anymore." Thinking that he had painstakingly planned for him, but this guy was so heartless in front of him, Lu Ping couldn't help but be angry. However, how clever was De Bao? When he saw Lu Ping's face sink, he knew that something was wrong. His body shrank down, turned into his original form, and plunged into the ground to escape, leaving Lu Ping helpless. However, Lu Ping admired De Bao's open-minded attitude. Not everyone could be as optimistic as De Bao. Lu Ping stretched out his hand and patted behind him, saying, "Ling Long, have you brewed a few drops of wine in the past 3 years?" A rustling sound came from behind Lu Ping, and Ling Long tiptoed to Lu Ping's side. When she noticed that the aura around Lu Ping had completely calmed down, she breathed a sigh of relief and relaxed, saying, "How would Ling Long dare to collect the spiritual energy to brew wine? When your transcendence was formed, it swallowed the pure and thick spiritual energy gathered by the 7 spiritual veins on the top of Failing Peak, almost killing Ling Long. After that, the expectations on you were too terrifying, so Ling Long had to seal her own spirituality, leaving only her body to regulate the spiritual veins. How would she have the spare time to brew the spirit wine?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "Now that my cultivation has been consolidated, I'm going to start refining pills. I'll leave the peak to you." The pill Lu Ping was going to refine was the spirit water nourishing pill. In the past, Lu Ping had exchanged the recipe for this pill from Wu Tianqing of the Spirit Beast sect, Laozu. Later, he had exchanged 12 drops of Wonder Jade Dew at the spirit item exchange of the Heavenly Xian sect for a top-grade blood skeleton flower with 18 petals. This was the main ingredient for refining the spirit water nourishing pill. After years of preparation, Lu Ping had already collected all the spiritual herbs needed to refine the spirit water nourishing pill. Originally, Lu Ping planned to refine it after he reached the peak of the core forging realm. He didn't expect that after a series of events, it would be delayed until now. However, at least with Lu Ping's current cultivation, the success rate of refining this pill was undoubtedly higher. Each petal of the blood skeleton flower could be used as a separate ingredient, which meant that the 18 petals of this blood skeleton flower could be used to refine a spirit water nourishing pill. However, the efficacy of the spirit water nourishing pill would vary depending on the number of petals used. Also, for a Dharma-level pill like the spirit water nourishing pill, which was used to strengthen one's physical body, a cultivator could only consume 3 pills before their body would lose its efficacy due to the body's resistance. If Lu Ping wanted to fully absorb the efficacy of this blood skeleton flower into his body, the best way was to divide the blood skeleton flower into 3 portions. Each portion would have 6 petals, and he would refine a total of 3 spirit water nourishing pills. This way, he would be able to maximize the efficacy of this blood skeleton flower. It wasn't that Lu Ping hadn't thought of refining the entire blood skeleton flower into a pill. That way, if he encountered another blood skeleton flower in the future, he could continue refining the spirit water nourishing pill. However, Lu Ping had experience refining this pill for Wu Tianqing and Laozu. At that time, with Lu Ping's alchemy skills, he could only refine 4 blood skeleton flower petals. Now that Lu Ping had the heaven-level spirit vein essence milk on hand, and his alchemy skills had also improved along with his cultivation, he estimated that he could only refine 6 petals at most. Before Lu Ping had advanced to the core forging stage, his physical body had already reached the level of a top-tier ritual weapon because he had taken the Golden Resilience Pill, the Bone Forging Pill, and the Azure Wood Jade Pill. Normally, when an early Dharma adept was nourished by spirit qi, his physical body would be at the same level of strength. However, when Lu Ping had advanced to the Dharma stage, his dragon Dharma power had been so powerful that it had even absorbed the spirit qi from the 7 main spirit veins. This had allowed Lu Ping's physical body to receive far more nourishment than an ordinary Dharma adept. This had allowed the strength of Lu Ping's physical body to reach a new level, which was equivalent to the strength of a talisman that had been condensed into a talisman. Normally, even if Lu Ping had dispersed the righteous qi around his body and removed the cultivation in his body, he would still be able to withstand an attack from a first-level core forging adept using a talisman that had been condensed into a talisman and not be damaged. This level of physical strength was usually only achievable by those adepts who had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage. With the spirit vein essence milk, a top-grade heaven-level spirit water, and the supply of spirit qi from the 7 main spirit veins, coupled with the purple crystal royal jelly, the process of refining the spirit water nourishing elixir was exceptionally smooth. It was just that it took a long time. However, this was not surprising. The higher the grade of the spirit elixir, the longer it took to refine it. This was also a huge form of torture for an alchemist's energy. Fortunately, after Lu Ping had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, his divine will had increased greatly. 3 months of sleepless nights was nothing to Lu Ping. The Na Chuan cauldron was opened, and the spirit water nourishing elixir was successfully refined. With the success of the first elixir, the process of refining the second and third elixirs was greatly reduced. It had only taken a total of 8 months. Lu Ping looked at the 3-inch-sized elixirs in front of him and could not help but swallow them. They were so big, he did not know if they would get stuck in his throat and not be able to be swallowed. However, thinking about the effects of the spirit water nourishing elixir on Wu Tianqing and Laozu, Lu Ping swallowed one of the elixirs. Chapter 946. No matter how big the elixir was, as long as it could be swallowed, it would not get stuck in the throat. In fact, the spiritual water nourishing elixir that Lu Ping cultivated melted the moment it entered his mouth. Lu Ping could clearly feel a wave of heat flowing from his abdomen to all parts of his body through his veins. Lu Ping activated the North Sea Wave listening spell, and the power of the elixir was absorbed by his body. Lu Ping could feel the strength of his body rising. At the same time, Lu Ping's bloodline was also strengthened, and his ability to withstand the true yuan also increased. When Lu Ping activated the North Sea Wave listening spell, he could feel the amount of true yuan that could be carried by his bloodline increase. The more true yuan that could be stored in his bloodline, the smoother Lu Ping's absorption of spirit qi. At the same time, when Lu Ping cast spells, he would be able to exert more power. Just as Lu Ping was concentrating on refining the elixir in his body and increasing the strength of his body, in his core space, the Dharma power of the dragon was patrolling its territory. It found a silver-white substance hidden in the purple mist that was gradually recovering. It was the pure yang soul that was condensed from the layer of pure yang soul that surrounded the golden core before Lu Ping entered the Dharma power stage. This layer of pure yang soul had temporarily helped Lu Ping increase his cultivation level after Lu Ping entered the peak of the core forging stage. When Lu Ping was condensing his Dharma power, Lu Ping's pure yang true yuan had been connected to the Dharma power of the dragon and completely absorbed along with the purple mist. Originally, Lu Ping thought that it was because his Dharma power was special, and the pure yang true yuan was absorbed by the Dharma power without much effect. Now, it seemed that this was far from the case. And just as Lu Ping's body began to grow again, the pure yang soul essence hidden in the purple Jin Yuan mist finally began to stir again. With a thought from Lu Ping, the Dharma power of the dragon opened its mouth and inhaled. A wave of pure yang true yuan rushed into the Dharma power. Lu Ping's face flushed red from the suffocation. Strand after strand of true essence flowed out from his bloodline and flowed back into his body. The true essence in his bloodline was like boiling water, trying to cook him alive. Fortunately, at this time, Lu Ping's body had been strengthened by the spiritual water nourishing pill. This allowed him to resist the pure yang true yuan that was flowing into his blood through the pure yang true yuan. As Lu Ping used the North Sea wave listening technique, the pure yang true yuan was refined into Lu Ping's own true yuan. Then, it returned to the body of the Dharma power. In Lu Ping's shocked senses, his cultivation, which had just reached the Dharma power stage and was beginning to stabilize, began to rise again. Just as Lu Ping seemed to be immersed in the shock and joy of his cultivation increasing, the spiritual water nourishing pill's medicinal power had been completely refined by Lu Ping. Although Lu Ping's body had been greatly improved, in Lu Ping's divine will, he could sense that Lu Ping's body had not advanced to the next level and reached the level equivalent to condensing two treasures. Just as Lu Ping's body stopped improving, the pure yang true yuan that was hidden in the purple mist of the true yuan in the core space also stopped sending in the pure yang true yuan. After the North Sea wave listening technique refined the last bit of pure yang true yuan, the feeling of boiling water flowing through his blood also began to dissipate. Lu Ping sensed something and immediately swallowed the second spirit water meridian nourishing pellet. As expected, as his body improved, the pure yang soul in his heart core released a surge of pure yang essence. After going through the reverse trace, the burning sensation in his veins became clearer again. Lu Ping's heart core was filled with the pure yang essence. Lu Ping knew that there was no time to lose. He quickly circulated the North Sea wave listening technique to refine and absorb the wave of pure yang true yuan. The pure yang true yuan was not true yuan. Instead, it was the true yuan condensed from pure yang qi after soaring Laozu had overcome his third lightning tribulation and advanced to the pure yang stage. It was also a type of original essence, but it had no attribute. Otherwise, Lu Ping would not have been so bold as to directly refine it into true yuan essence and let it be absorbed by the Dharma power dragon. The quality of a pure yang soul was above that of a Dharma idol soul. However, a pure yang soul could also increase a cultivator's cultivation base. More importantly, the pure yang energy contained within a pure yang soul could increase the spiritual attributes of a cultivator's Dharma idol to a higher level, forging a stronger foundation for the Dharma idol. That would help the Dharma idol overcome lightning tribulation even more. However, the pure yang true yuan clearly had high requirements for a cultivator's physical body. When Lu Ping had advanced to the peak of the core forging realm, he had barely met the minimum requirements to absorb the pure yang true yuan. This was because Lu Ping's physical body was already far stronger than ordinary people. If it was any other cultivator, they would only be able to receive the pure yang true yuan after advancing to the Dharma power stage. When Lu Ping was condensing his Dharma power, the pure yang true yuan had greatly helped him condense his dragon Dharma power. However, Lu Ping had not noticed it at the time. On the contrary, he had thought that the pure young true yuan had already been absorbed and refined by his Dharma power. After Lu Ping had refined the spiritual water body developing pill, his physical body had improved again. Thus, he had activated the pure young true yuan again, causing Lu Ping's cultivation to improve greatly. After refining the second spiritual water body developing pill, Lu Ping did not stop for a moment. He swallowed the third spiritual water body developing pill. This time, the effect of the pill was much weaker than the second time. However, the strength of his physical body had still improved considerably. Lu Ping was multitasking. On one hand, he was refining the effects of the spiritual water body developing pill in his body. On the other hand, he was using the North Sea wave listening technique to refine the pure yang true yuan. In his core space, the Dragon Dharma power had benefited from the pure yang true yuan while Lu Ping was refining the spiritual water body developing pill. This caused its body, which had originally shrunk due to condensing the great power seed, to expand again and again. It had long since returned to the size of the Dharma power that Lu Ping had condensed when he had just advanced to the Dharma power stage. In the instant that the third spiritual water body developing pill was refined by Lu Ping had originally been prepared to stop training. However, Lu Ping's physical body had actually undergone a qualitative change after the accumulation of the 3 spiritual water body developing pills. Although it was only 3 spiritual water body developing pills, Lu Ping's physical body had actually improved by another level. It had previously been equivalent to the strength of a talisman treasure, but now it was equivalent to the strength of a talisman treasure with 2 talismans treasures. The strength of 2 talismans treasures was already equivalent to the physical body of an ordinary mid-Dharma adept who was preparing to overcome the second thunder trial and advance to the late Dharma power stage. This breakthrough caused the pure yang true yuan spirit, which had originally been quiet, to start circulating again. Lu Ping had no choice but to start using the technique again. The Dragon Dharma power in his core space excitedly circled around, and its body grew at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye. Its body, which had originally returned to its original size of 30 feet, suddenly grew by another foot. By the time the pure yang true yuan spirit had reached the limit of what Zhou Donghuang's physical body could withstand, the Dragon Dharma power had already grown to a length of 35 feet. On the contrary, the pure yang true yuan spirit, which was hidden in the purple mist, began to shrink significantly after being continuously absorbed and refined by the Dharma power. Compared to before, it had shrunk by about a third. On the top of Failing Peak, Lu Ping slowly opened his eyes. De Bao had once again appeared beside Lu Ping, and behind De Bao, Lu Xiaohai, who had returned to his original form, lowered his head and looked at Lu Ping from behind De Bao. There was no trace of the demeanor of a direct descendant of Taoist Hu, and he was worse than a mouse. Lu Ping took a deep breath and then suddenly exhaled. A white wave came out of Lu Ping's mouth and turned into a rolling long river in midair. It traveled more than 10 feet before slowly disappearing in midair. Lu Ping glanced at the giant tiger hiding behind De Bao, which made the gorgeous big cat tremble with fear. It almost lay on the ground again and covered its ears and eyes with its front paws. How long has it been? Lu Ping, who had made up his mind to let this big cat hone his courage, ignored Lu Xiaohai and went straight to ask De Bao. Boss, we have been in this failing mountain for 5 years. Lu Ping looked at De Bao's expression and said with a smile, "What's the matter, are you tired of staying here?" De Bao was quite open in front of Lu Ping. He nodded with a smirk. Lu Ping changed the topic and asked, "How is it? Have there been any new discoveries on this failing island in these years?" There were still many hidden treasures on Fei Ling Island. Fei Ling sect had a legacy of over 20,000 years. Since ancient times, countless cultivators of Fei Ling sect had opened up grotto mansions on Fei Ling Mountain. Some of the hidden grotto mansions were probably unknown to the cultivators of Fei Ling sect back then. Even now, who knew how many grotto mansions on Fei Ling Mountain had yet to open up? However, these hidden or unopened caves were basically opened by practitioners below the core forging stage. Even if there were some good things in them, Lu Ping might not be interested. The real caves of the Dharma adepts of the Failing Sect would definitely be under the control of Failing Sect. It was impossible for Failing Sect not to have any treasures left in them. De Bao patted the wide belt around his waist and said, "Don't worry, boss. We've already looked at all the caves that we could find. Everything that's useful is here. The things that we don't like are still left in the caves. We have to leave something for future generations to remember, don't we?" Lu Ping looked around and said, "I am afraid there are only 3 valuable things left on the entire Failing Island. One is the 7 large spirit veins at the foot of this peak. In the entire North Sea practice world, there is no force that has so many large spirit veins. Even Jinling Mountain has only managed to gather 4 large spirit veins. Recently, the large spirit vein found at the place where the treasure ship sank will probably be moved into the treasure ship." De Bao was curious and hurriedly asked, "What is the second valuable thing?" Lu Ping drew a line in the sky and said, "Of course it is the Failing Sect's protective array. This array was able to protect Failing Island for 4,000 years even after it sank to a depth of 90,000 feet. The Laozu of the Failing Sect who achieved the true soul level was really unfathomable." Chapter 947. The third one, Lu Ping didn't wait for De Bao to ask and said, "Is Failing Island, the only giant island in the entire North Sea? After tens of thousands of years of inheritance, Failing Island has been transformed by Failing Sect's Laozu to a near-perfect state." Lu Ping opened his arms as if to embrace the whole world. Failing Island is the most beautiful place in the North Sea. De Bao naturally didn't care about this, but after hearing Lu Ping's words, he naturally asked, "If that's the case, how did Failing Sect get destroyed?" Lu Ping shook his head and didn't answer. Instead, he turned around and said, "Let's go find Zilan. We're leaving Failing Island." In an extremely remote place in the northwest sea of the North Sea, Su Weihong, who was in a sorry state, was running for his life in panic. His face was still filled with horror, and at the same time, he looked back from time to time as if there was a fierce beast chasing after him. Su Weihong didn't think that he would meet this evil star in such a remote place. The 4 core forging cultivators that accompanied him were all killed by this person. If it weren't for his quick reflexes, he feared that even he himself would have fallen under this person's sword. Including Su Weihong, there were 2 late core forging cultivators and 3 mid-core forging cultivators. The 5 of them could form a Dao soldier formation inherited from Xianling Sect. Even if 5 late core forging cultivators joined forces, they wouldn't be able to do anything to them. However, just as the 5 of them were following the instructions of the East Seas or Prospector and searching for a spiritual material vein, one of the mid-stage core forging cultivators was silently frozen into an ice sculpture at the bottom of the sea. It was such a familiar way of killing. His junior brother's corpse shattered into pieces of ice in front of Su Weihong and floated to the surface of the sea. Each piece of ice contained a part of his junior brother's body. Behind the ice sculpture was the person who had become the nightmare of almost all Xianling Sect cultivators for the past 5 years. Jinling's abandoned disciple, Yin Xianchu. Ever since Dao Shi Laozu was assassinated by Yin Xianchu 5 years ago, he killed 4 Xianling Sect disciples and escaped with heavy injuries. After that, Yin Xianchu spent a year recuperating from his injuries. In the next 4 years, Yin Xianchu frequently attacked. In the past 5 years, Xianling Sect had lost a total of 1 Transcendence Laozu, 11 Core Forging Realm cultivators, and dozens of Blood Condensation Realm cultivators. The entire Xianling Sect was thrown into chaos by Yin Xianchu alone. Every Xianling Sect cultivator who died in his hands was first turned into an ice sculpture, then shattered into ice shards on the ground. The busybodies of the North Sea's cultivation world called Yin Xianchu the Ice Demon, meaning that he was as bloodthirsty and murderous as a demon. Moreover, whether it was his cultivation, strength, or assassination skills, he far surpassed his father, one of the 3 truths and 4 spirits of Jinling, perfected shadow, Li Xianyin. Fortunately, although Yin Xianchu had become bloodthirsty in the past 5 years, other than Xianling sect, he basically didn't take the initiative to find trouble with cultivators from other sections. Therefore, although the other sects denounced Yin Xianchu and even maliciously speculated that this was a conspiracy by Zhenling, other than that, they could only watch Xianling sect as a joke. The shocked Xianling sect cultivators hastily retaliated, but before they could catch Yin Xuanchu's hidden tracks, another mid-stage core forging realm cultivator was turned into an ice sculpture before Su Weihong's eyes and shattered into ice shards. Run! Su Weihong made a prompt decision. He abandoned the 2 mid-stage core forging realm junior brothers and flew out of the sea with all his might. Then, he turned into a streak of light and flew toward the southeast direction. Just as Su Weihong escaped a few dozen feet away, he heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the sea behind him. Su Weihong could even imagine the lifelike ice sculpture of his junior brother, who was only at the mid-core forging stage, screaming in pain. Su Weihong's heart trembled, and he immediately threw out a fire arrow talisman. A huge pillar of fire arrow shot up into the sky, exploding into a silver flower with a radius of several hundred feet in the air. It could even be seen from hundreds of miles away. Su Hongwei knew that the only junior brother remaining in the mid-core forging realm wouldn't be able to last long against Yin Xianchu. Thus, Su Hongwei bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. He actually executed the blood escape secret technique. This time, Xianling's sect had asked the Crystal Palace to send a mine seeker to search for spiritual materials in the Northwest Sea. This mine seeker was accompanied and protected by Lu Shuheng Laozu and more than a dozen core forging realm cultivators. Su Weihong's team was also sent by Lu Shuheng Laozu. As long as Su Weihong could escape to Lu Shuheng Laozu, Yin Xianchu who was chasing after him would definitely die. At the very least, he could stay alive under the protection of Fa Xiang Laozu. Just as Su Weihong's imagination ran wild, he suddenly felt a chill behind him. Without thinking, Su Weihong threw out his natal magic weapon and hit it behind him with all his might. Clang! Su Weihong staggered and fell forward. At the same time, he tried his best to turn his body and look behind him. However, the moment his natal magic weapon collided with the magic weapon of the person behind him, a chill had already spread through his natal magic weapon and into his body. Su Weihong couldn't help but shiver. After all, he was also a late-stage core forging realm cultivator, a rising star that Xianling sect focused on cultivating, and a proud disciple of Feng Shutao Laozu. The Fuyao spell was running quickly in his body. Although it couldn't expel the chill in his body, it could at least temporarily suppress it. When he looked up, he saw Yin Xianchu, who was dressed in black, looking at him coldly. There was not the slightest aura around him, but he didn't look like an ordinary person. Instead, he looked like a piece of ice that wasn't sick, causing the surrounding temperature to drop. Su Weihong knew that this was the aura of suppression. Usually, only Dharma manifestation cultivators could have this aura. Apart from them, only those top-level demons with pure bloodlines could have bloodline suppression. It was said that Yin Xianchu was a mixed-blood human and demon. He had the bloodline of a top-level demon, the Ice Dragon, in his body. Could it be because of this? This thought flashed through Su Weihong's mind, but he didn't forget that this was a moment of life and death. This place was extremely close to where LV Shuheng and Laozu were previously. Presumably, they had already seen the fire arrow talisman that Su Weihong had sent out and were rushing over to help. As long as he could hold on, perhaps he could escape with his life. However, could he block it? Su Weihong didn't dare to think further, but these thoughts kept drilling into his mind. Su Weihong's mind was already in a mess. The natal magic weapon in his hand was doing its best to block Yin Xuanchu's attack, but his expression was becoming more and more panicked. A look of disdain flashed across Yin Xuanchu's eyes. Then, he returned to his calm state. The pair of frost daggers in his hands also became more and more fierce. Every time they clashed with Su Weihong's magic weapon, a cold force invaded his vital essence. This caused Su Weihong's vital essence to not circulate smoothly. Every time he blocked Yin Xuanchu's attack, he seemed more and more powerless. Seeing that Su Weihong was about to perish under Yin Xuanchu's sword, even Su Weihong himself was beginning to despair, waiting for the final moment to arrive. However, Yin Xuanchu himself suddenly stopped and abruptly retreated dozens of feet. Only then did he hover above the surface of the sea, sizing up his surroundings. Su Weihong was stunned at first. Then, he realized something, and a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. The space beside Su Weihong suddenly opened, and LV Shuheng stepped out. He first glanced at Su Weihong with slight dissatisfaction, then looked at Yin Xuanchu and said, "You are Yin Xuanchu, the disciple that Jinling abandoned?" Yin Xuanchu didn't answer LV Shuheng and Laozu. Instead, he kept the daggers in his hands and said, "How many people have come? Come out." "Good. No wonder you are Li Xuannin's son. You really have guts." LV Shuheng clapped his hands and sighed. All these years, Jinling seems to have gotten lucky. He has an endless stream of elite disciples. If you, Yin Xuanchu, had not been expelled from Jinling, I'm afraid your achievements would not have been much worse than Lu Xuanping's. 1 immortal and 1 demon, 2 swords and 2 tigers. Even so, the North Sea cultivation world still regards you as Jinling's disciple." Yin Xuanchu remained silent. He only silently watched the Xianling sect cultivators that appeared from the surrounding sea, the void, the islands, and the clouds. They surrounded him in the center. 1 Dharma Manifestation Realm cultivator, for late core forging realm cultivators, and a late core forging realm cultivator, Su Weihong, who had just recovered from the dire situation. Furthermore, there were also Xianling sect cultivators rushing over. Yin Xuanchu was surrounded and caught in an unprecedented crisis. Yin Xuanchu had once ambushed and killed a Dharma adept and even managed to kill 4 of them while being surrounded by several core forging adepts. However, that was an ambush that he had only launched after meticulous planning and careful planning. Even so, when Yin Xuanchu broke through the siege, he was seriously injured and had to recuperate for a year before he gradually recovered. At this time, Yin Xuanchu had not only lost the opportunity to launch sneak attacks and assassinations that he was best at, but he was also trapped in a meticulously planned siege. The situation was the exact opposite of what it was before. Now, he could only fight head-on against 1 Dharma adept and several late core forging adepts of the same level. Yin Xuanchu's current situation could be said to be extremely dangerous. Hundreds of miles away, on the sea, a portal suddenly opened. Lu Ping walked out of the portal with a look of curiosity on his face. The portal behind him gradually closed, and Lu Ping looked around at the surrounding sea. Then, he casually stretched out his hand and opened a portal. When his figure appeared again, he was already more than 10 miles away. Looks like I can now more accurately control an area of more than 10 miles. Even though my divine will can cover nearly 30 miles, once I go beyond this area, there will be a huge deviation in the coverage of the space. Lu Ping felt the space magic that he was gradually becoming familiar with. He muttered to himself, "Looks like it's because I'm still a little unfamiliar with it. I think with more practice, I'll be able to more accurately teleport." Chapter 948. LV Shuheng Laozu's palm imprinted on the ice wall behind Yin Xuanchu. The force passed through the ice wall and Yin Xuanchu's body leaned forward violently. However, he resisted the impulse and threw a pair of frost daggers at the Xianling sect's late-stage core forging disciple who cooperated with LV Shuheng Laozu to block Yin Xuanchu. The friar didn't expect Yin Xuanchu to fight with his life on the line. He hurriedly brandished the Dharma treasure in front of him in an attempt to block the pair of daggers. Unfortunately, the sword in his left hand swung through the air and lifted the sword in his right hand up high, just in time to avoid the cultivator's block. However, the short sword in his right hand missed his chest and went straight for the cultivator's shoulder. The friar was quite quick-witted. Seeing that the block had failed, he immediately released a layer of protective energy. However, this layer of protective energy was like a piece of paper, unable to stop the dagger from piercing through. With a cry of pain, the dagger in the right hand pierced through his shoulder and retreated. The cultivator took the opportunity to move far away and felt a gust of cold air directly attacking his heart. Half of his shoulder was frozen and numb. For a moment, LV Shuheng Laozu felt angry after being humiliated. This was the second time Yin Xianchu successfully traded injury for injury in this way. Previously, although he was hit by LV Shuheng Laozu's divine ability, Yin Xianchu also took the opportunity to cut off two of Su Weihong's fingers. At this time, Yin Xianchu was already battered and exhausted in front of the Xianling sect disciples, especially after suffering two consecutive hits from LV Shuheng Laozu. However, there was no trace of pain or anxiety on Yin Xuanchu's face. His cold and solemn face was like a piece of ice that wouldn't melt for thousands of years. This trace of coldness seemed to have solidified in his bones. However, the calmer and scarier Yin Xianchu looked, the more LV Shuheng Laozu had the urge to go crazy. This was completely different from what he expected Yin Xianchu to be: anxious, panicked, afraid, and even begging. Since that's the case, then go to hell. LV Shuheng Laozu really didn't want to play this game anymore. Although he had already injured two people, with the help of the other three late core forging realm cultivators, LV Shuheng Laozu finally seized the opportunity to use his spatial ability to appear behind Yin Xianchu. A green-golden liquid seeped out of his arm and gathered to form a green-golden liquid glove, which wrapped around LV Shuheng Laozu's palm. A slender needle extended and extended from LV Shuheng Laozu's right index finger. In the end, it followed LV Laozu's slightly bent finger and pierced towards Yin Xuanchu's Jr. At the same time, his palm had already turned azure gold. Pa! A crisp sound rang out. Yin Xianchu, who originally thought that he would die if he couldn't dodge this palm strike, hastily turned around. He saw that LV Shuheng's right hand, which was wrapped in a azure gold glove, was being held tightly by someone's bare hand. LV Shuheng was unable to break free. Senior brother Lu. Yin Xianchu was stunned. The person who was holding LV Shuheng's hand was Lu Ping. Lu Xianping. LV Shuheng was shocked. How did he appear? How did he not notice him beforehand? Also, how did he manage to block his palm strike so coincidentally? He actually used his bare hand. How was this possible? How was this possible? This guy could even defeat a Dharma manifestation realm cultivator. He couldn't fail miserably. Thinking of this, LV Shuheng Laozu felt a chill in his heart. His tone involuntarily softened, no longer as domineering as before. Lu Xianping, what are you going to do? LV Shuheng asked sternly, but no matter how one looked at it, one could see the flicker of fear in his eyes. Lu Ping released his hand, and LV Shuheng and Laozu immediately retreated more than 10 feet. Then, they heard Lu Ping say, "What do you think I'm going to do?" Lu Ping's reputation in the North Sea was too great. As a core forging realm cultivator, he defeated a Dharma manifestation realm cultivator, killed a Dharma manifestation realm primordial crocodile, and killed Blood Shura. Such a battle record made every early Dharma manifestation realm cultivator in the North Sea feel a sense of fear from the bottom of their hearts. Lu Xianping, don't forget that the person behind you is an abandoned disciple of Zhenling. Even your sect's Tian Shu Laozu has already launched a large-scale search for him in the North Sea. If you want to protect him, are you going to become the enemy of the entire North Sea cultivation world? LV Shuheng knew that as long as Lu Ping decided to protect him, the assassination plot that he had painstakingly laid out this time would be declared a failure. Although he had not fought with Lu Ping before, he knew that he would not be able to gain any advantage from Lu Ping. Moreover, there were a few disciples around at this time. If Yin Xianchu killed a few more of them, he would really have gone for wool and come home shorn. However, at least he had to prove that Lu Xianping was protecting Yin Xianchu and push him to the opposite side of the entire North Sea cultivation world. If he could force Jinling to yield again and expel Lu Xianping from the sect, it would be a victory for the entire North Sea cultivation world. All the sects in the North Sea would definitely be happy to see that happen. Just as LV Shuheng and Laozu were secretly pleased with their plan, they heard Lu Ping suddenly say faintly, "I will not become the enemy of the entire cultivation world." LV Shuheng was stunned. What did this mean? Was he going to personally suppress Yin Xianchu and clean up the sect? LV Shuheng and Laozu immediately denied this idea. No, absolutely not. This Lu Xianping must be thinking of suppressing Yin Xianchu now in front of me, then bringing him back to Jinling. How he would deal with him then would be up to Jinling. He decided that he could not let Lu Xianping take Yin Xianchu away. Otherwise, he would not be able to avenge the deaths of Xian Ling sect's martial uncle Dao Shi and more than 10 core Forging Realm disciples. Thinking of this, LV Shuheng and Laozu suddenly smiled and said, "It would be best if martial nephew Lu Xianping could personally clean up the sect, but Yin Xuanchu's blood feud with our sect is too deep. When the time comes, please hand him over to our sect to deal with. This way, we can avoid the tragedy of a fellow disciple killing each other. Or, martial nephew Lu Xianping, you can do it yourself. With us as witnesses, our sect can also give an explanation to the entire North Sea cultivation world." Lu Ping looked at LV Shuheng and Laozu, who had a fake smile on his face, and his eyes were filled with surprise. He said faintly, "Who said I was going to clean up the sect?" LV Shuheng and Laozu had a bad feeling in their hearts. They suddenly became angry and said, "Why? Are you really going to stand on the opposite side of the entire North Sea cultivation world and save this demon?" A pair of flying swords suddenly appeared around Lu Ping's body. He said, "How would the North Sea cultivation world know that I saved Yin Xianchu?" At this time, ancestor Lu Shuheng suddenly realized that the person in front of him was actually planning to kill him, but where did his confidence come from? With his current peak core forging cultivation, could it be that he had a helper? LV Shuheng and Laozu's divine perceptions swept around, but they heard Lu Ping say again, "Stop looking, there are no other helpers." LV Shuheng's face darkened. He said, "Lu Xianping, the old man knows that you are a genius. Even the old man is not sure that he can defeat you. But Yin Xianchu is also seriously injured. Do you think you can stop the old man by yourself? As long as the old man returns to the North Sea, you should know what the consequences will be. Escape? Do you think you can escape?" Lu Ping's words were like gusts of chilly wind drilling into Laozu's ears. LV Shuheng and Laozu's face suddenly changed. "Watch out! Ah! Ah!" 5 screams sounded almost at the same time. Including Su Weihong, the 5 Xian Ling late core forging cultivators who came with LV Shuheng and Laozu were all killed in an instant. Lu Shuheng's divine sense seemed to have noticed something, but Lu Ping's moves were too fast for him to warn him. Legend had it that Lu Xianping once inherited Fei Ling sect's invisible sword. Could this be the invisible sword? You are so ruthless." LV Shuheng and Laozu shuddered. Their eyes were full of panic. The method of killing 5 late core forging cultivators was not something that LV Shuheng and Laozu could figure out. Have you advanced to the Dharma manifestation stage?" LV Shuheng and Laozu still could not see through the secret technique Lu Ping used to hide their cultivation. Yin Xianchu, who was standing behind Lu Ping, had already searched through the 5 disciples' storage artifacts. Then, he found a reef and sat on it. He began to cultivate and heal his injuries as if there was no one else around. Lu Ping seemed oblivious to what was happening behind him. He smiled and said, "Why would a dead man know so much? Go to hell first." LV Shuheng and Laozu's face contorted. The green-gold liquid magic weapon in his hands suddenly turned into flying needles, piercing towards Lu Ping from all directions. Lu Ping, on the other hand, was still standing there calmly with a faint smile on his face. Seeing that the flying needles were about to pierce Lu Ping's body, LV Shuheng and Laozu finally had a glimmer of hope. These flying needles were not ordinary. They could break through the protective vigor qi of various cultivators. If Lu Ping thought that his protective vigor qi could withstand these flying needles, then he would definitely suffer a great loss. However, at this time, Lu Ping moved. He pointed at the two flying swords that were flying around him. Countless sword lights began to evolve from the two flying swords. The 120,000 sword lights were even denser than Laozu's flying needles. Lu Ping looked like he was surrounded by countless sword lights, layer after layer. What kind of swordsmanship was this? Even if this kind of swordsmanship had a spiritual treasure in it, how many layers could he break through when faced with these dense layers of sword lights? LV Shuheng and Laozu did not even need to think about it. Their methods would definitely not be able to break through Lu Ping's defense. What a joke. The sword lights were even denser than flying needles. How could they fight? LV Shuheng opened a dark door behind Laozu. His body stepped back and disappeared into the darkness. There was no need for him to fight Lu Xianping to the death. As long as he could get rid of Lu Xuanping's entanglement and prove that Lu Xianping had protected Yin Xianchu, Zhenling's sect would definitely be in a terrible predicament. What Zhenling sects, immortal and devil? So what if he had the bad reputation of running away without caring for his disciple? He would not be the first Dharma adept to be defeated by Lu Xianping. There was a continuous series of ding ding dang dang sounds behind him. LV Shuheng and Laozu did not know why, but they let out a long sigh of relief. Their whole body relaxed. It was only then that they realized that Lu Xianping had actually given them such a huge amount of pressure. Outside the area, LV Shuheng and Laozu stepped out of the void. They heard a demonic greeting. LV Laozu, where are you going? Chapter 949. Just when LV Shuheng Laozu thought that he had used his space powers to escape, a nightmarish greeting came to his ears. LV Laozu, where are you going? You, LV Shuheng Laozu looked at the smiling Lu Ping in front of him and pointed at him with a trembling finger, but he could not say a word. Space powers, it must be space powers. This Lu Xianping had actually entered the Dharma stage, and his space powers were actually far above the old man's. How could this be? How could this be? The smile on Lu Ping's face suddenly disappeared, and a murderous aura overflowed. The thin water long stream swords were like two dragons fighting for pearls, and they were aimed at LV Shuheng Laozu's chest. LV Shuheng Laozu's index fingers suddenly stretched out and turned into two green-gold long whips. The long whips danced and intertwined with each other, sealing the space around LV Shuheng Laozu. However, Lu Ping's swords were not so easy to block. The thin water long stream swords combined, and after entering the Dharma stage, Lu Ping's power was no weaker than a thunder calamity's spiritual treasure. The space sealed by the green-gold long whips suddenly exploded, and the two tails of the whips were cut off by the two swords, like two dead snakes falling into the sea. Seeing that the two swords were about to pierce into LV Shuheng Laozu's body, LV Shuheng Laozu finally exploded. A strange green-gold snake Dharma power rose from his back, and the snake's long tongue came out, pointing directly at the two stabbing swords. Ding! Chi! The snake's tongue touched the two flying swords, but it did not expect that the two flying swords would turn in mid-air and cut off half of the snake's tongue. Looking at the snake's tongue that did not fall into the sea, it turned into a cloud of thick spiritual qi and dissipated in mid-air. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows slightly. The green-gold snake's tongue must be poisonous, right? Sure enough, at the same time that half of the snake's tongue turned into spiritual qi, a sweet smell rushed straight into Lu Ping's nose. LV Shuheng Laozu's snake's tongue was cut off, which was equivalent to his Dharma power being damaged. His panicked face became even paler, but when he saw that Lu Ping did not dodge the snake's tongue and absorbed the spiritual qi into his stomach, he could not help but smile, as if his plot had succeeded. However, The scene of Lu Ping using all his inner force to resist the poison did not appear in his imagination. Instead, he saw Lu Ping's smiling face. He looked at the Dharma behind LV Shuheng Laozu and said, "Is this dragon Dharma power of Jiao?" As soon as he said this, the surrounding sky suddenly brightened and darkened. LV Shuheng Laozu had a bad feeling, and then there was the rumbling of thunder in the sky. The strange snake behind LV Shuheng Laozu turned around and followed LV Shuheng Laozu to avoid it. However, no matter how fast LV Shuheng Laozu was, he could not be faster than lightning. Although the strange snake avoided the snake's head, it did not avoid the snake's body. The Yin water divine thunder exploded on the strange snake's body and directly blew the Dharma power into two. Blood gushed out of LV Shuheng Laozu's mouth, ears, and nose. LV Shuheng Laozu tried his best to stop his body from shaking. His lifeless eyes stared at Lu Ping, who was walking towards him. His bloody mouth opened and closed, and a vague voice came from his mouth, "Natal great magical power." Lu Ping walked closer and looked coldly at LV Shuheng Laozu, whose vitality was beginning to dissipate. He said, "Yes, it is the natal great magical power." Ha, ha 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 ha. LV Shuheng Laozu's face showed a look of realization, but then he suddenly laughed strangely. Lu Ping saw that LV Shuheng Laozu's dying body suddenly surged with an unstable aura. He could not help but frown, and said, "Self-destructing Dharma power. That depends on whether you have the chance to do so." Lu Ping casually waved his hand, and a bloody hole burst open in LV Shuheng Laozu's chest. Then, a lightning tail could be seen coming out of the bloody hole. Boom! Like a muffled thunder from LV Shuheng Laozu's body, LV Shuheng Laozu's face suddenly became ferocious and terrifying. Then, a large amount of blood gushed out of LV Shuheng Laozu's body. Countless pieces of his eyeballs and internal organs fell from the sky into the sea. Lu Ping, on the other hand, had already left with his spatial divine art. 10 miles away, Yin Xianchu, who was sitting cross-legged on a foot-long reef, suddenly opened his eyes. The void before him rippled, and Lu Ping appeared in front of him after tearing open a space gate. Dead? Dead. A Dharma adept died so easily in your hands. How can Xianling sect let this go? You really have reached the Dharma adept stage. It's nothing more than a scapegoat for you. What does that have to do with me? Looking at Yin Xuanchu's dumbfounded expression, Lu Ping continued, "Aren't you at core forging stage 9 now? It looks like you are preparing to condense your third heaven and earth spirit item, right?" "Yes, I had a fortuitous encounter in the East Sea, and the dragon ice pearl was quite extraordinary. At least I didn't waste my time." Lu Ping rummaged through his interspatial mystic artifact and took out 2 bottles of high-quality healing medicinal pellets and handed them to him. "You shouldn't have returned to the North Sea." "I had no choice, and it was a freak accident." Lu Ping nodded. Yin Xianchu was not a man without foresight. He could see the current situation in the North Sea. Since Yin Xianchu had a reason, and Yin Xianchu did not take the initiative to speak, Lu Ping did not ask further. Instead, he asked, "What do you plan to do next?" "Hide first, and then find my way back to the East Sea." "Do you want to go to Huangli Island first?" "I won't cause you any more trouble. LV Shuheng's death is going to stir up a lot of trouble. I don't know how many pairs of eyes are staring at Zhenling's sect right now. With our relationship, I'm afraid there will be even more eyes on Huangli Island." Seeing him like this, Lu Ping did not force him. Instead, he turned to look at the faint mist floating on the sea and said, "There's someone else?" Yin Xianchu nodded and said, "It seems to be a mind seeker that Xianling sect invited from the Crystal Palace." "A mind seeker?" Lu Ping said in surprise, "This is an extremely unorthodox branch of cultivation. In our sect, only perfected Xianwei specializes in this area, and his achievements are not high. He can only check the direction of the earth veins, estimate the reserves of spirit ores, and so on." Yin Xianchu smiled and said, "So, he still has some value. Lu Ping reached out and grabbed at the mist. The mist churned and turned into a huge mist palm. In the middle of the palm was a late core forging realm cultivator, struggling to break free from the palm. You'd better let me go. I am one of the top 3 mind seekers in the Crystal Palace. My position in the palace is equivalent to that of 24 direct adepts. Even ordinary Dharma adepts have to be courteous when they see me. If anything happens to me, you'd better be prepared to bear the wrath of the palace. Seeing that his struggle was futile, the cultivator in his 50s calmed down. After being brought to Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu, he looked at them with disdain and said these words. Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu looked at each other and laughed out loud. Seeing that the two of them did not take his words to heart, the mind seeker had a bad feeling in his heart. He immediately changed his tone and said, "What do you want?" Cultivation resources, cultivation techniques, natural spiritual items, magic treasures, magic tools, as long as you mention it, the Crystal Palace will definitely satisfy your request. Lu Ping smiled and said to Yin Xianchu, "It seems that this mind seeker's status is not low. The Crystal Palace values him very much." Yin Xianchu said coldly, "Then all the more we can't let him live." Crackle. The fog that had turned into a giant palm was immediately dispersed. The mind seeker lit up a talisman, and a space cover covered him. His face suddenly revealed a sinister expression as he said, "I already remember Lu Xianping and Yin Xianchu of the Zhenling sect. You killed Xianling sect's Faxiang Laozu and even wanted to threaten the cultivators of the Crystal Palace. Just wait for the Crystal Palace to punish you." After the space cover covered him, it was about to shrink back into the void, but it suddenly realized that the void had suddenly become out of reach. The mind seeker looked back in panic and saw that an even larger space cover had sealed the mind seeker and the space cover formed by the escape talisman. Space seal, this is impossible. How can you know the space magic that only mid-Dharma adepts can use? This is not something you can know. Lu Ping flipped his palm, and the sky suddenly darkened. When the mind seeker looked up, he saw a giant silver seal descending from the sky. The space cover was like a giant bubble, and with a pop, it shattered. Lu Ping smiled at Yin Xianchu and said, "I've added another crime to your list." Yin Xianchu rolled his eyes and said, "It doesn't itch when there are too many lice." Lu Ping hooked his finger, and the storage artifact of the mind seeker landed in Lu Ping's hands. Lu Ping rummaged through it and finally found a few jade scrolls and a map. Looks like these are the only things that are valuable. Lu Ping tossed the few jade scrolls in his hand and said, "These are the experiences of the previous generations of mind seeker in the Crystal Palace, as well as the cultivation achievements of this mind seeker. I think it must be very important to Jinren Xianwei. As for this map." Lu Ping opened it and looked at it, then looked up at the surrounding sea and muttered to himself, "This is a sea map of this area." Yin Xianchu said, "There's no need to compare. This time, Xianling sect is here to find a spiritual material mine, and it has been confirmed that it is in this area. Just now, I secretly followed Su Weihong and found the location. I'll mark it on the sea map for you. Take it back and ask the sect to come and occupy it as soon as possible. The death of a Dharma adept is a big deal. Xianling sect is probably already on the move to find the murderer." Yin Xianchu marked the location of the spiritual material mine on the sea map that Lu Ping handed over and said, "I've seen this mine before. It seems to be a little special. It's a mixed mine with several kinds of extremely rare spiritual materials mixed together. Although it's very valuable, it's not easy to separate it." Lu Ping thought about how Jinling's craftsmanship hall had put all their effort into repairing the treasure ship. The precious spiritual materials contained in this spiritual material mine might come in handy. It was just that at this critical juncture where Lu Shuheng and the mine seeker from the Crystal Palace had died, it would be extremely difficult to extract them. Therefore, he said, "Just leave it to the craftsmanship hall. Don't forget, Xian Lian is now our sect's craftsmanship master." Yin Xianchu laughed and said, "That's true. He is now one of the three wonders of the sect. Separating these mixed ores should be a piece of cake. Chapter 950. Three Wonders. Lu Ping recalled that Lu Shuheng mentioned one immortal and one demon just now, so he asked, "What do you mean by that?" Lu Shuheng mentioned one immortal and one demon just now. Could it be that something amazing happened in the past 5 years and I missed it? Yin Xianchu looked at Lu Ping with slight surprise and said, "Where have you been in closed-door cultivation all these years?" Logically speaking, with your current status, the sect should have told you about this even if you didn't purposely inquire about it. Then, as if realizing something, Yin Xianchu continued, "By the way, I still don't know why I'm here. I've been extremely secretive this time, and Xian Ling's sect's secret operation this time can be said to be coincidental to me." "How did you find out?" Lu Ping laughed and scolded, "Stop nagging. I saved your life and now you're suspecting me. Don't change the subject. Tell me about the one immortal and one demon and three wonders. They seem to be very famous." Yin Xianchu smiled. He knew that Lu Ping didn't want to reveal his closed-door cultivation place, so he explained, "Nowadays, the North Sea cultivation world has made up a rhyme about Jinling's most outstanding disciples in the past few years. It's called One Immortal and One Demon, Two Swords and Two Tigers. It refers to 6 of Jinling's third-generation disciples." Lu Ping was stunned by this name. Seeing that Yin Xianchu was silent, he couldn't help but ask, "What do you mean?" Yin Xianchu said, "This one immortal and one demon naturally refers to you and me, Water Sword Immortal Lu Xianping and Ice Sword Demon Yin Xianchu. Although I was expelled from the sect, it seems that the North Sea cultivation world still regards me as a disciple of Jinling. This can't be helped. It seems that returning to the North Sea this time was really a mistake." Yin Xuanchu's achievements in the past 5 years could be described as glorious. He even killed Fa Xiang Laozu of Xian Ling's sect and killed a bunch of other core forging stage cultivators. He even provoked Jinling and Fa Xiang Laozu of Xian Ling's sect to hunt him down, but they still couldn't find him. Now, although Lu Ping was the one who killed Lu Shuheng and the Mind Seeker in the Crystal Palace, in order to disassociate himself from Jinling, Lu Ping definitely wanted Yin Xianchu to be the scapegoat. Otherwise, Jinling's situation would undoubtedly be even more difficult. Therefore, the title Ice Sword Demon was well-deserved. His reputation was even comparable to Lu Xianping, Jinling's third-generation disciple. Although Lu Xianping, the Water Sword Immortal, had disappeared in the past 5 years, and even very few people in Jinling knew his whereabouts, his past illustrious reputation made it so that even if he did nothing, no one dared to rank him behind the others. Yin Xuanchu's many years in the East Sea could be said to be equal in both luck and hard work. Originally, when he returned to the North Sea by chance this time and killed the enemy who killed his mother and father, and then caused a huge wave in the North Sea, it was not that he did not have the thought of competing with Lu Ping. But when he saw Lu Ping advance to the Dharma stage, this thought had mostly disappeared. Then, when he saw Lu Ping casually kill a Dharma adept of the same level, Laozu, Yin Xuanchu's last trace of thought also disappeared. An immortal and a demon. This demon was ultimately still too far away from the immortal. As for the 2 swords and 2 tigers, it refers to the light sound sword Shi Xianling, the Shura sword Du Xianfeng, the sick tiger Xuanshang, and the fire tiger Xianyong. Yin Xianchu cast aside the distracting thoughts in his mind and continued to explain. Lu Ping asked curiously, "How can it be the 4 of them?" "As far as I know, there are many third-generation disciples in our sect who are not weaker than them." Xianyong had previously followed Tianqing Laozu to the Central Plains, and it was said that he had traveled there, so he must have seen the world and improved. After Tianqing Laozu was injured, Xianyong, as Tianqing Laozu's successor, naturally rushed back from the Central Plains, but just happened to run into the battle where the humans and demons once again joined forces to destroy Mara. Yin Xianchu spoke with fervor and assurance, "We have to talk about the Mara calamity that befell the demon race 3 years ago. At that time, these 4 people all participated in the battle where the humans of the Northern Sea helped the demon race to destroy Mara. There were many great Mara who died in their hands, and they even attracted the pursuit of a blood Shura. These 4 people became famous because of these 4 people. Yin Xianchu paused here, but it did whet Lu Ping's appetite. Lu Ping also did not expect that this ice cube man, Yin Xianchu, would actually have a time when he was so talkative. He could not help but ask, how could it be? Could it be that the 4 of them joined forces to kill a blood Shura? Yin Xianchu pursed his lips and said, do you think these 4 people are you? Even you only managed to kill a blood Shura that had lost its life-bound spiritual treasure. In reality, these 4 people managed to escape unscathed under the pursuit of this blood Shura. Don't look at others with your own eyes. In the eyes of others, this is already an extremely glorious achievement. Although Yin Xianchu did not describe the process in detail, Lu Ping could already imagine the dangers hidden within. A blood Shura that had a companion spiritual treasure was an extremely difficult opponent to defeat among early Dharma adepts. Yao Yong and the other 3 were able to escape unscathed under the pursuit of a blood Shura, so it was naturally not difficult for them to become famous. Lu Ping blinked and said, why is senior brother Xuansheng called Sick Tiger? Although senior brother Xuansheng is like you, he is not good at communicating with others and is also extremely cold when leading people, but there is not a single hint of sickness in him. Yin Xianchu could not be bothered to argue about this with Lu Ping. He continued, the disciples of Jinling naturally know that these 6 people alone are far from being able to represent the most outstanding 3rd-generation disciples. Hence, there are 2 phrases circulating among the disciples of Jinling, 3 righteous, 3 strange, 2 pairs of husband and wife. There are many people who say this, and there are a total of 10 of them. Lu Ping had originally thought that the phrase, 1 immortal, 1 demon, 2 swords and 2 tigers, could not represent the most outstanding 3rd-generation disciples of Jinling, but he did not expect that Yin Xianchu would immediately have 10 more of them. Lu Ping looked at Yin Xianchu in confusion and said, who did you hear this from? Looks like your life as a fugitive in the North Sea during these 5 years was not exciting at all. You actually still have the leisure to ask about this information? Yin Xianchu pointed at the sea area that was already far away from them and said, I learned about this from Su Weihong and the others when I was tailing them. The 3 righteous referred to the 3 3rd-generation disciples of Jinling who were rather experienced. They were Reverend Li Xuanru, the disciple of Jinling sect leader Laozu Lu Tianling, Reverend Lu Xianyuan, the disciple of Tian Shui Laozu, and Reverend Qi Xiankai, the grand disciple of Tian Shui Laozu. These 3 reverends had been involved in handling the affairs of the sect since a long time ago, and they had long since become independent in the sect. Even though they rarely fought, their levels of cultivation were incredibly high, and they enjoyed great prestige among the 3rd-generation disciples. The 3 strange referred to the 3 3rd-generation disciples who had relatively high achievements in other fields. They were Reverend Xian Lian, who had already advanced to become a refining grandmaster in the refining hall, Reverend Xian Xian, the puppet master in the puppet pavilion, and Reverend Xian Fang, the alchemy master in the pill pavilion. As for the 2 couples, it was not too surprising to Lu Ping. The first couple naturally referred to Reverend Xian Tian, the eldest disciple of Tian Lin Laozu, and Reverend Xian Hui, the eldest disciple of Tian Qin Laozu. As for the second couple, Lu Ping was originally a little uncertain, but after hearing Yin Xianchu say that it really was Zhong Jian and Ma Yu, he was finally convinced. There was no need to say much about Xiantian and Xianhui. Among the 3rd-generation disciples, their cultivation and experience were above Lu Xianyuan and Qi Xiankai. Only Reverend Li Xuanru was comparable to them. However, after Reverend Xian Tian had advanced to the late core forging realm, he had been stationed in the Yingtian courtyard in the central region. Later, in order to reunite with Reverend Xian Tian, Reverend Xian Hui had followed Tian Qin Laozu to the central region. Therefore, the 2 of them were not famous in Jinling. As for Zhong Jian and Ma Yu, their cultivation was only higher than Reverend Xian Fang. Like Reverend Xian Lian, they had just advanced to the 7th layer of the core forging realm not long ago. However, the two of them had inherited Tian Fan and Tian Shui Laozu's joint attack secret technique. When the two of them combined their swords, they could even fight a 9th layer core forging realm cultivator to a standstill. Therefore, among the 16 disciples, this couple occupied a spot. However, Lu Ping also knew that although these 16 people each had their own merits and were truly outstanding in Jinling's 3rd-generation disciples, this did not mean that there were no 3rd-generation disciples who could stand shoulder to shoulder with them. For example, Reverend Zhang Xianbei, Reverend Xian Lei, and Reverend Xian Su, whom Lu Ping knew. These 3rd-generation disciples had already advanced to the core forging realm, and their qualifications and strength were comparable to Reverend Xian Tian and Reverend Xian Ru. Another example was Reverend Xian Zhu and Lu Ping's Dao companion, Reverend Xian Hu. The former was the proud disciple of Reverend Xian Zhu, the great talisman crafting master of Jinling. Reverend Xian Zhu's talisman crafting technique was deeply inherited by Reverend Xian Zhu. In Jinling, Reverend Xian Zhu was also worthy of the title of master. As for Reverend Xian Chen, Reverend Xian Zhu was the direct disciple of Reverend Xian Chen. Her cultivation in array formations had already reached the level of great master. Now, she was assisting Reverend Xian Chen in sorting out the various array formations and restrictions on the treasured ship. Their achievements might not be inferior to the 3 wonders. Another example was Xian Zhan and Xian Xiang, who had always been at odds with Lu Ping. In fact, it was not that Jinling's ranking was unfair, but there were too many outstanding disciples among the 3rd generation of Jinling. The two of them traveled far away from the Northwest Sea. Only then did Lu Ping ask, "What are your plans? Are you going to return to the East Sea now?" Yin Xianchu smiled bitterly and said, "I want to, but the entire North Sea and East Sea's transportation formations are secretly guarded by experts. If I go there now, I'll definitely walk into a trap. Besides, I'll hide in the North Sea for a while. You don't have to worry about me. I've found a few safe places in the past few years, so I don't have to worry about being discovered. If there's a chance to return to the East Sea, I'll naturally look for you for help." Lu Ping pondered for a moment. Thinking that there would definitely be a big storm in the North Sea because of LV Shuheng's Laozu's death, Lu Ping really couldn't be too close to Yin Xianchu at this time. Thus, he said, "All right, I'm also in a hurry to return to the sect. Let's bid farewell here." Yin Xianchu nodded. Then, he thought of something and said, "Right, there's something else I need to tell you. Recently, there seems to be a lot of strangers in the North Sea. You better remind the sect to pay attention." "Strangers?" Lu Ping frowned. The strangers that Yin Xianchu mentioned were naturally not people he didn't know. He was referring to the cultivators outside the North Sea. "Do you know which forces are coming from outside?" Yin Xianchu shook his head and said, "I'm not too sure. It seems that there are people from the East Sea and people from the Central Plains. They're probably heading for the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven." Chapter 951. 7 Stars Grotto Heaven. Lu Ping was taken aback. The 7 Stars Grotto Heaven was a marvelous place. Tens of thousands of years ago, 7 great cultivators in the North Sea worked together to open up the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven. It was also a very famous ruin in the North Sea's cultivation world. The 7 Stars Grotto Heaven's opening time was uncertain, but it was usually open for at least 100 years. Lu Ping had entered it with Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu when he was still in the blood condensation realm. Lu Ping had benefited greatly from it, and he had been benefiting from it ever since. In particular, the 7-star treasure palace in the 7-star Grotto Heaven was known as a treasure bowl. In the past tens of thousands of years, the 7-star Grotto Heaven had opened countless times. However, the treasures in the 7-star treasure palace had never stopped. No one knew how many treasures there were in the 7-star treasure palace, but it always gave people the feeling that it was inexhaustible. However, the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven could only allow blood condensation realm cultivators to enter. If one wanted to enter the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven through the opening passage, one had to use a special talisman made by a Dharma manifestation realm cultivator to resist the various dangers in the passage. Why would foreign forces pay so much attention to the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven? It should be known that the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven could only allow blood condensation realm cultivators to enter. Even if there were really great treasures inside, the hidden dangers were probably not something a blood condensation realm cultivator could handle. Of course, there were core forging realm cultivators who used secret techniques to suppress their cultivation level to the blood condensation realm. However, such secret techniques could only be used on early-stage core forging realm cultivators. Once the seal in the Grotto Heaven was broken, the person would immediately be teleported outside. Therefore, core forging realm cultivators often only had the power to attack once in the Grotto Heaven. Most of the time, they were used to intimidate others. Could it be that they were here for the purple crystal bees? This thought popped up in Lu Ping's mind. However, he had only revealed the purple crystal royal jelly in the Central Plains, but he did not reveal the secret of the purple crystal bees. Or the Thousand Wonder Dew. Apart from him, who else knew that there was a large pool of thousand poison meteorite raw lava hidden in the core area of the Golden Valley and that there was a large ball of Thousand Wonder Dew in it? No, there was another person who might know something. Lu Ping suddenly remembered that there was another person who entered the core of the Golden Valley back then. It was Liao Yong, a disciple of the famous alchemy family of the North Sea. Liao Yong might not have been able to reach the depths of the core region, but he should have at least reached the edge of the core region and seen the scene inside. What's more, an alchemy grandmaster of the Liao clan, Liao Yong's grandfather, Taoist master Liao Ding, had died in the core area. Lu Ping had even taken away Taoist master Liao Ding's storage artifact. Thinking up to here, Lu Ping suddenly remembered that the swarm of purple crystal wasps did not belong to him alone. Back then, in the Sea of Flowers in the Seven-Star Grotto Heaven, a female cultivator from the Northern Sea's AI family, AI Shuyao, had obtained the purple crystal wasp's eggs together with Lu Ping in the Sea of Flowers. Could it be because of the swarm of purple crystal wasps? After all, when Lu Ping was in the mainland, he had caused a lot of trouble because of the purple crystal wasp's royal jelly. Just as Lu Ping was making wild guesses, he suddenly realized that he was a little too wishful thinking. The Seven-Star Grotto Heaven had existed for tens of thousands of years, and countless rare treasures had appeared in it. Whether it was the meteorite essence, the swarm of purple crystal wasps, or other treasures, many had appeared in the Seven-Star Grotto Heaven. Who could be sure that the treasures obtained by Lu Ping had caused foreign forces to covet the Seven-Star Grotto Heaven? Lu Ping could not help but laugh. When he looked up, he found that he had flown all the way to the Jinling area. Then, he found the nearest medium-sized island on the sea and returned to Tianling Mountain using the teleportation array there. After arriving at Tianling Mountain, Lu Ping did not stop and went straight back to Huangli Island. At this time, Jinling's Dark Hall disciple, who was walking in the dark, had already passed him the latest news about the Northern Sea. Lu Ping opened the Jade Scroll, which was only accessible to less than 30 people in the Jinling area, using the secret technique of Jinling. In the Jade Scroll, the first piece of news was, it is suspected that a Dharma adept from Xianling sect has fallen in the Northwest Sea. Xianling sect is loose on the outside but tight on the inside. Several Dharma adepts who were outside have returned, and Crystal Palace adepts have appeared frequently. Lu Ping was shocked by this piece of news. It had only taken him a short time to return from the Northwest Sea, but the sect's first reaction should have been to block the news of Laozu's tragic death. How did his own sect know about it now? Immediately, Lu Ping thought that this news must have come from Jinling spies in Xianling sect. Lu Ping thought that since his own sect could have spies in Xianling sect, then Xianling sect could also have spies in his own sect. His sudden appearance on Tianling Mountain at this time and his hasty departure might arouse the suspicions of these spies. Furthermore, even if he was not spotted by Xianling sect's spies, there was no guarantee that the spies from other sects would not have noticed him. After all, his current identity was too conspicuous, and this was the first time he had appeared after disappearing for 5 years. It was bound to attract the attention of other sections. Lu Ping was secretly annoyed. He had been too careless this time. In the distance, Wang Qi and sixth brother Lei rushed over to greet Lu Ping when they heard that he had returned. Lu Ping waved his hand and ordered Wang Qi to find Fang Xia, Fang Wei, Zheng Wu, and Du Jialua. After that, he fell into deep thought. In the jade slip, other than the first piece of news about LV Shuheng Laozu's death, there were hundreds of other pieces of news. Most of them were about the recent happenings in the North Sea, the rest were about the East Sea, and the rest were about the situation in the Central Plains. The jade slip also talked about the opening of the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven. As expected, Zhenling was aware of the involvement of cultivators from the outside world. Sixth brother Lei saw that Lu Ping had a lot on his mind after he returned, but it didn't seem like he was plotting something. Instead, it seemed like he was troubled. Sixth brother Lei looked at Lu Ping for a while before asking, "What's wrong? Is there something wrong?" Lu Ping looked at sixth brother Lei, nodded, and didn't say anything. Back then, sixth brother Lei plotted against Lu Ping, but he was captured by Lu Ping and planted a mark in his divine sense. His life was in the hands of Lu Ping, so there were some things that Lu Ping didn't hide from him. Sixth brother Lei saw that Lu Ping didn't say much and knew that it wasn't something difficult. So, he changed the topic and said, "It seems like your cultivation hasn't improved much in the past 5 years." Sixth brother Lei was already at the peak of the core forging realm. He was only one step away from being able to condense his Dharma power. Naturally, he could see the cultivation that Lu Ping was displaying now. Suddenly, Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. It was as if he had suddenly figured out a difficult problem. His expression relaxed. That's right, after he left Fei Ling Island, he used a secret technique to seal his cultivation and lowered it to the peak of the core forging realm. At that time, even Lu Suheng couldn't see through it, let alone the spies in the sect. After figuring this out, Lu Ping had a plan in mind. At this time, Du Jialua, Fang Wei, Fang Xia, and Zheng Wu followed behind Wang Qi into the cave. "Greetings, Master." After Fang Xia, Fang Wei, and the others bowed to Lu Ping, they looked at Du Jialua in surprise. Since when did Du Jialua become a disciple of Huangli Island's Hearing Wave Mansion? Even Wang Qi was a little surprised. Not only because Du Jialua called Lu Ping master, but also because Du Jialua's current cultivation had obviously not reached the core forging realm. According to Lu Ping's previous style of accepting disciples, those who had not reached the core forging realm were not even qualified to enter the Hearing Wave Mansion. Du Jialua was also quite famous among the fourth-generation disciples. However, he had always been valued by perfected master Lu Xianyuan. Moreover, Du Jialua cultivated an earth attribute cultivation method. Many fourth-generation disciples in Jinling thought that Du Jialua would become perfected master Lu Xuanyuan's disciple. However, they didn't know that Du Jialua had already become Lu Ping's disciple when he was still in the central region. In fact, he was probably even older than Wang Qi and the others. Lu Ping didn't care about the surprise in their eyes. Instead, he asked directly, "Who among you knows about the opening of the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven?" The few of them hesitated for a moment before Wang Qi answered, "Master, rumors about the opening of the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven have been spreading in the North Sea recently. However, it is said that the sect has already made plans for it. Laozu has also selected the fourth-generation disciples to enter the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven." Lu Ping nodded and said, "The few of you, get ready to enter the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven together." The few of them were shocked to hear Lu Ping's words. Wang Qi hesitated for a moment before saying, "Master, should we ask Grandmaster about this?" Lu Ping shook his head and said, "You guys go first. I will report this to Master later." With that, Lu Ping waved his right hand in front of him. The space around him suddenly changed. Lines appeared strangely on Lu Ping's fingertips. As his fingertips moved, they formed a bluish-purple talisman in the air. Condensing talisman in the void. This is a space magic that only Dharma laws Laozu can control. You've actually advanced to the Dharma stage. Sixth Elder Lei looked like he had seen a ghost. Wang Qi and the others were also shocked. Then, their faces were filled with joy. Lu Ping nodded and said seriously, "Don't tell anyone about me advancing to the Dharma stage. Otherwise, the Ting Tao residents will be in big trouble." Seeing that the few of them nodded solemnly, Lu Ping handed the talisman to Wang Qi and said, "With this talisman, you can enter the 7 stars grotto heaven smoothly. Once you complete the task I have given you, you can meet up with the other disciples and help them fight for more benefits for the sect." Wang Qi hesitated for a moment before saying, "Master, junior brother Du Jialua has not advanced to the core forging stage yet, but he can enter and leave the 7 stars grotto heaven freely. Fang Wei, Fang Xia, and Sun Wu are only at the first stage of the core forging stage, so it won't be too difficult for them to seal their cultivation and enter. However, my cultivation is already at the 3rd stage of the core forging stage, so it won't be easy for me to seal my cultivation to the blood condensation stage." Chapter 952. As soon as Wang Qi finished speaking, Lu Ping had already taken a step forward and appeared beside him. Unbeknownst to him, Lu Ping had already placed a hand on his shoulder. Wang Qi didn't even have time to react. He felt a gentle yet irresistible force flow down from his shoulder into his heart core space. Wang Qi didn't dare to move the true yuan around him, but Lu Ping's true yuan had already invaded his heart core space. A bluish-purple mist formed around his golden core. The moment the purple mist formed, Wang Qi could clearly feel that the vital energy around his body had lost connection with his golden core. The vital energy that had seeped into his core space as he circulated his cultivation technique was bounced off to the edge of the core space the moment it came into contact with the purple mist. As Wang Qi's golden core was sealed, his entire aura started to change. The true yuan that flowed through his bloodline gradually degenerated into magic power due to the lack of a source of support. However, Wang Qi could feel that even though the layer of purple mist surrounded his golden core and sealed his cultivation, the seal wasn't strong enough. Furthermore, it didn't cut off the connection between his spiritual will and his golden core. As long as Wang Qi willed it, the true yuan in his golden core would surge and the purple mist would immediately turn into pure spiritual qi. Not only would his cultivation recover, but this pure spiritual qi would also greatly benefit Wang Qi's cultivation. Wang Qi and the other disciples didn't notice anything, but 6th Elder Lei was a knowledgeable person. He saw how easily Lu Ping had sealed Wang Qi's cultivation all the way to the peak of the blood condensation realm. It wasn't that he didn't have such methods, but it was impossible for him to do it as casually as Lu Ping did. 6th Elder Lei was proficient in the art of assassination, so he was naturally familiar with concealing his cultivation and disguising himself as a pig to eat a tiger. Therefore, he had a deeper understanding of Lu Ping's methods, and the fear in his heart grew stronger. After sealing Wang Qi's cultivation, Lu Ping sealed Fang Wei, Fang Xia, and Sun Wu's cultivation all the way to the peak of the blood condensation realm. Finally, he walked over to Du Jialua and flipped his palm. A poisonous flame instantly rose from his palm. Lu Ping handed the poisonous flame to Du Jialua and said to the disciples, "This flame is called the Dark Prison Poisonous Flame. It's a very special kind of heaven and earth flame. After years of meticulous nurturing, its power might even be comparable to a high-grade earth-level heaven and earth flame. With this poisonous flame, you will be immune to all poisons." After handing the Dark Prison Poisonous Flame to Du Jialua, Lu Ping took out a spirit beast pouch and shook it. The amethyst queen bee flew out from the pouch. Lu Ping casually made a hand seal and sealed the amethyst queen bee's cultivation all the way to the peak of the blood condensation realm. Then, he handed the spirit beast pouch to Wang Qi and said, "This pouch of amethyst bees is not to be underestimated. Unless we're in the sea of flowers in the 7-star grotto heaven, we must not expose it outside the spirit beast pouch. If we're discovered and chased, we'd rather break the seal and escape from the 7-star grotto heaven than let a single amethyst bee fall into the hands of others. Lu Ping's last sentence was directed at Wang Qi. Seeing Wang Qi nod solemnly, he finally relaxed. Lu Ping handed a jade slip to Wang Qi and said, "After entering the grotto heaven, Wang Qi will be in charge of everything. The things I've instructed you to do have already been written in the jade slip. Pay special attention to the movements of foreign cultivators. The 7-star grotto heaven is a land of treasures, but it's also a hellish battlefield. Whether you can obtain anything will depend on your strength, wisdom, and luck." Lu Ping handed a few protective treasures to the disciples before sending them out. Beside him, 6th Brother Lei smiled and said, "Brother Lu, do you have any other instructions?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "Indeed, I have something to trouble Brother Lei with. Brother Lei has already heard that there have been many foreign forces interfering in the North Sea recently. Brother Lei has been in the Central Plains for a long time, so you're very knowledgeable and proficient in concealment techniques. I'd like to trouble Brother Lei to go out and investigate and find out which forces are interfering in the affairs of the North Sea." After sending off 6th Brother Lei, Lu Ping was just about to return to his cave abode when he stopped and looked up. He saw a silver light shooting straight towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping reached out and took the sound transmission sword. His heart sank, and he turned around and walked towards the teleportation portal. On Tianling Mountain, Lu Ping left the teleportation portal and hurried towards the palace of Chonghua Light. From afar, he saw Lu Tianling, Laozu, and a middle-aged female cultivator walking out of the palace of Chonghua Light. They seemed to be sending off their guests. When he got closer, Lu Ping was stunned when he saw the female cultivator. This female cultivator was none other than Xiao Yuhuan Laozu from the Xiaoyao sect, whom Lu Ping had met in the fallen mystic land of the East Sea. Seeing that Lu Ping had arrived, Lu Tianling, Laozu, was about to introduce him to Xiao Yuhuan, but Xiao Laozu giggled and said, "Isn't this Tianqin's martial nephew, spiritual master Lu Xianping? I haven't seen you for decades, but your cultivation has already reached the peak of the core forging stage. You've even made a name for yourself in the Central Plains. Even I have heard of your name in the East Sea." Lu Tianling, Laozu, looked at Lu Ping and smiled. "So you know my disciple?" Xiao Yuhuan, Laozu, looked at Lu Tianling, Laozu in surprise and said, "So you're fellow Lu's disciple? No wonder, so you're the disciple of a famous master." Lu Ping's heart settled. A mid-Dharma adept really couldn't see through his hidden cultivation, so he quickly stepped forward and bowed to the two Laozu. "Greetings, master, greetings, Xiao Laozu." Xiao Laozu nodded at Lu Ping, then turned around and said, "If that's the case, then I'll have to trouble fellow Lu. In the future, if Tianqin ever returns to your sect, please tell her that if she's free, she can come to the Xiaoyao sect as a guest." Many of our disciples were taken care of by Tianqin, the alchemy grandmaster. Lu Tianling, Laozu, smiled and said, "Rest assured, fellow Xiao. If Tianqin ever returns, I'll definitely let you know." Xiao Laozu turned around and smiled at Lu Ping. "Lu Xiaoyu, how old are you? Are you married? Our Xiaoyao sect doesn't lack other things, but we have plenty of unmarried female disciples. If you're interested, I'll be your matchmaker. How about it?" Lu Ping was shocked speechless by Laozu's fierce words. Lu Tianling, Laozu, saw Lu Ping's embarrassed face and said, "Thank you, fellow Xiao. It's just that this kid has already become a cultivation partner with Sister Xian Chen's disciple." Xiao Laozu looked slightly disappointed and said, "Oh, that's really a pity." At this time, Lu Tianling, Laozu, said, "But there are quite a few young talents in our sect. If fellow Xiao is interested, why don't you let the disciples of our two sects interact more and get closer to each other? If we can get one or two good things done, wouldn't that be wonderful?" Xiao Laozu also showed a look of understanding and said, "Fellow Lu's suggestion is not bad. When I return to the East Sea, I'll bring this up with senior sister sect master. At that time, you two sect masters can discuss it. After sending away Xiao Laozu, Lu Ping asked curiously, this Xiaoyao sect is even using marriage? Lu Tianling, Laozu, snorted and said, come with me. Lu Ping had no choice but to follow Lu Tianling, Laozu into the palace of Zhonghua. In the palace of Zhonghua, Lu Tianling, Laozu, had a cold expression on his face. When he saw Lu Ping come in, he asked, you killed Lu Shuheng? Lu Ping did not expect his teacher to know the specific news of Lu Shuheng's death so quickly. Previously, the Dark Hall had only guessed that Xianling's sect might have lost a Dharma adept, but in just a few hours, his teacher had already gotten hold of the new information and guessed that it was Lu Ping. Lu Ping said curiously, that can't be. My hands and feet are considered clean. How can teacher be so sure that it was me who did it so quickly? Although Lu Tianling, Laozu, had a confident look on his face, when he heard Lu Ping admit that Lu Shuheng was really killed by him, there was still a hint of surprise on his face. Lu Ping saw this and knew that his teacher was only guessing and did not have any concrete evidence. He could not help but secretly breathe a sigh of relief. As long as he did not leave any big clues for Xianling's sect, then even if Xianling's sect wanted to vent their anger on Zhenling could still deny it. At most, he could take the blame on Yin Xianchu again. Anyway, Yin Xianchu had already vented his anger on the entire Xianling sect because of his parents. This was no longer a secret in the North Sea cultivation world. At most, the sects in the North Sea could only use Yin Xuanchu's matter to isolate Zhenling. But if they said that they would launch a crusade against his former sect because of an abandoned disciple, it would not be justifiable no matter what. Lu Tianling, Laozu, saw that Lu Ping was still indifferent, and he couldn't help but get angry. Ridiculous. Since when did you become so ignorant of the bigger picture? Right now, our sect is in a very dangerous situation. Recently, there have been many forces from the East Sea and Middle Earth coming into contact with the North Sea's local sects and families. The situation is delicate, and yet you still dared to kill Lu Shuheng. Aren't you afraid that the other sects will join forces to besiege our sect and end up like Fei Ling's sect? Seeing that his teacher was angry, Lu Ping had no choice but to listen to his teacher's lecture. Unexpectedly, Lu Tianling, Laozu, asked, I heard that there is also a mine hunter from the Crystal Palace among them? Lu Ping nodded. Yes. I also obtained a map of a mixed spiritual or vein from that mine hunter. The spiritual materials contained in this vein are extremely precious, and it is located in the Northwest Sea. Lu Tianling, on the other hand, Laozu didn't even look at the map that Lu Ping handed over. Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, then said, so that teacher knows that this mixed spiritual or vein contains several kinds of raw spiritual materials, which may be of great help in repairing the treasure ship. Lu Tianling, so what? Can we go and mine it now and inform Xianling sect's Lu Shuheng and the mine hunter from the Crystal Palace that died in our hands? Actually, our sect can. Chapter 953. After the matter. Lu Tianling Laozu said angrily, if it was just Xianling sect, then we could mine after the matter was over. At worst, we could just face Xianling sect head-on. But don't forget that there was also a mine seeker from the Crystal Palace who died in your hands. Does that mean that we can challenge the Crystal Palace after the matter is over? Lu Ping was stunned for a moment. He didn't think of this and was at a loss for words. Lu Tianling Laozu asked, was Xianchu there too? Lu Ping hesitated for a moment and said, yes, brother Xianchu killed a few Xianling sect practitioners, but he was surrounded by Lu Shuheng and the others. I happened to pass by, so I couldn't just stand by and watch, but I also couldn't let the sect be accused of secretly aiding an abandoned disciple to assassinate a Xianling sect disciple. So, I simply killed them all and put an end to it. What a good way to put an end to it. Lu Tianling Laozu was furious. How dare you? You do things as you please, but have you ever considered the whole sect? I think you've been spoiled by the Laozu in the sect. Do you really think you're a genius? You're simply lawless. Lu Ping broke out in a cold sweat after being scolded by his teacher. It wasn't because he was scared, but because his teacher's words had hit him where it hurt. As his level of practice grew, he contributed more and more to the sect, and his status in the Zhenling sect rose step by step. Even the second-generation Dharma adepts of the sect had to be polite to him when they saw him. They never preached to him like an elder, not to mention the second-generation disciples who had yet to reach the Dharma stage. As a result, Lu Ping's status as a third-generation disciple had gradually strayed away from his original status as a third-generation disciple. Other than a few close friends, the Water Sword Immortal, Lu Xianping, had almost become a legend among the third-generation disciples, let alone the fourth-generation disciples. On the other hand, Lu Ping was still immersed in the mentality of being superior to others. And this time in the Northwest Sea incident, with Lu Ping's strength, he could have secretly rescued Yin Xianchu without leaving any evidence. So even if Lu Shuheng and Laozu guessed that Zhenling adepts might have secretly attacked, it was only the loss of a few early core forging disciples, and there was no evidence, so it would not cause a backlash from the whole Xianling sect. But it just so happened that Lu Ping couldn't help but want to test his strength after advancing to the Dharma stage, and in the end, this situation happened. Although he was aware of the possible serious consequences, seeing the famous Dharma adept, Laozu, fall so easily in his hands, he couldn't help but feel smug. Lu Tianling and Laozu saw that Lu Ping's face had turned green and red from his scolding, and knew that Lu Ping had realized something, so he waved his hand and said, "Since you disappeared in the North Sea for 5 years and reappeared again, then do what you should do. Don't do anything unusual because of Lu Shuheng's death. That will only make people more suspicious." Lu Ping couldn't believe his ears and asked helplessly, "Then what if Xianling sect and the Crystal Palace come to question me?" Lu Tianling Laozu waved his hand impatiently and said, "You don't have to worry about these things." Lu Ping walked out of the palace of Zhonghua in confusion. He had caused such a big trouble, but all he got was a scolding from his teacher. Apart from that, there was nothing else. Lu Ping naturally knew that his teacher was trying to find a way to clean up his mess, but after causing such a big trouble, he couldn't do anything to help. Lu Ping couldn't help but feel guilty. Lu Tianling Laozu watched Lu Ping's back disappear outside the palace of Zhonghua, then stood up. The space beside him didn't fluctuate at all, but Celestial Phenomenon Laozu just casually walked out of the space. Lu Tianling Laozu smiled and said, "Uncle Master's space magic is getting more and more amazing." Celestial Phenomenon Laozu smiled and didn't reply to Lu Tianling Laozu's words. Instead, he said, "Incredible, this kid's cultivation has already advanced to the Dharma stage. Looks like he really found a good place to train in seclusion." Just now, even the old man was almost discovered by him. Lu Tianling's smile froze on his face, and a strange look flashed across his face. Then, he said, "This kid, he even fooled me." Celestial Phenomenon Laozu smiled and said, "It's not just you, even that Xiao Yuhuan who was at the mid-Dharma stage couldn't see through his cultivation, right?" Lu Tianling Laozu was puzzled and said, "I don't know where this kid got this treasure from, he can even fool a mid-Dharma stage." Celestial Phenomenon Laozu shook his head and said, "It's not a treasure to hide his cultivation, it's just that his divine sense is too amazing. If there's a treasure to hide, even if you can't see through his cultivation, you can still know that he used a treasure to hide his cultivation. But he used his divine sense to disguise himself, and those whose divine sense cultivation is lower than his can't see through it." After a moment of silence, Lu Tianling Laozu asked, "Uncle Master, how much of what Xiao Yuhuan said is true?" Celestial Phenomenon Laozu thought for a moment and said, "There's no harm in sending some disciples to interact with him. The Carefree Pavilion and the Tianyue sect have a close relationship, and both sides have a common enemy, the Crystal Palace. From this point, it can be seen that the other side has no ill intentions." Since they came to the North Sea to express their goodwill, we naturally can't wait to see them. There's no reason for us to push our allies away. If we can really unite by marriage, although it won't affect the substance, at least it will show our attitude. Lu Tianling Laozu thought for a moment and said, could it be that something happened in the East Sea? Celestial phenomenon. Laozu said, send a letter to Tianlin, tell him to investigate the recent situation in the East Sea, especially the situation of the Crystal Palace and the other 5 large sections. He must do everything in detail. Lu Tianling Laozu didn't say anything else. Celestial phenomenon. Laozu turned around and asked, what do you plan to do about Lu Shuheng's death? Lu Tianling Laozu smiled and said, disciple just thought of a way. I heard that recently, a force from the Middle Earth is in contact with the Blue Sea through the Liao family. Currently, because of Xianling sect's secrecy, no one in the North Sea knows about this mixed mineral vein in the Northwest Sea except for our sect. Lu Ping knew that his teacher must have a plan, but his teacher didn't let him participate. Lu Ping thought for a moment and went to the secret cave under the cliff of the back mountain of Tianling sect. The back mountain of Tianling sect was originally a forbidden area of the entire Jinling sect. Because of the treasure ship, the security here was even tighter than before. Only the true trusted disciples of the sect would be sent here. As for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th generation disciples with family backgrounds, they wouldn't be involved in such confidential matters. When Lu Ping saw Chen Lian again, on the stone wall of the cave, Jinling had opened up a huge refining room for Chen Lian to use alone. There were all kinds of spiritual materials piled up in the refining room. Rare and precious spiritual materials could be seen everywhere in Chen Lian's room. Seeing Lu Ping come in, Chen Lian walked over from the side of a mystic treasure crafting furnace. His face looked haggard but his eyes shone brightly. Looks like you've been very busy recently. I'm afraid you don't have time to refine other things, right? Xian Lian nodded and said, indeed, because of the treasure ship, I've been so busy recently that even my cultivation has been delayed. Many people asked me to refine magic treasures, but I did help you refine 2 of them. With that, Xian Lian lowered his head and rummaged through his storage device for a long time before taking out the nether water sword. He said, I've condensed the 7th and 8th invisible treasure restrictions. This is because I've secretly saved up the spiritual materials to repair the mountain-splitting axe and the treasure ship, so I've condensed 2 invisible treasure restrictions in a row. However, condensing the 9th invisible treasure restriction is a little difficult. The spiritual materials to refine the invisible sword are hard to come by, and I don't have anything suitable here. Lu Ping happily grabbed the nether water sword and put it down. He carefully examined it, then reached out and knocked on the spine of the sword. At the same time, a crisp sound rang out, and the entire sword rippled in the air like a pool of autumn water, as if it would dissolve in the air at any time. True essence poured into the sword, and the nether water sword immediately let out a joyful sword cry. Then, it flashed in Lu Ping's palm and disappeared. When it reappeared, it was already in the core space. With this nether water sword, the power of Lu Ping's great innate sword technique would undoubtedly double, and he would truly have the foundation to compete with the great innate sword technique. What's the other thing? The nether water sword immediately aroused Lu Ping's interest, and he looked forward to the next item even more. However, Lu Ping looked at the 3-inch-long object in Chen Lian's hand and said, "This is the vast sea bell you refined?" "It's just a bell." Chen Lian said helplessly, "I refined this according to the method of refining the vast sea bell recorded in the jade slip you gave me earlier. I also refined a few strange spirit materials from the spirit material ores you asked the 4th generation disciples to find in the vast sea relic according to the method and added them into the bell. But the result is like this. What can I do?" Lu Ping weighed the bell in his hand and said, "How many treasured prohibitions are condensed inside?" Chen Lian said, "The spiritual materials needed to replicate the vast sea bell are of extremely high quality and are extremely rare. So far, I have only condensed 4 treasured prohibitions, barely reaching the level of a spiritual magic treasure. If I want to improve it further, I will need to find better spiritual materials. However, this magic treasure is worthy of being used by vast sea Laozu in the past. Just its defensive ability is comparable to a defensive magic treasure condensed with 6 treasured prohibitions. Lu Ping casually shook the bell. He didn't infuse any true essence into the bell, so it looked like an ordinary bell. However, there was a hint of a unique aura in the crisp ringing sound. Only core forging realm cultivators like Xian Lian could detect it. Lu Ping said with a smile, I wonder if it has the special restraining effect on Mara like the real vast sea bell. It seems that I will have to find an opportunity to test it out. After putting away Chen Lian's replica of the vast sea bell, Lu Ping asked, how is the refinement of the treasure cabin on the treasure ship going? Chen Lian pointed at the spiritual materials in the huge refining room and said with a wry smile, I have some ideas. Look at these things, they are all used to replicate the House of Gold. I don't know when I can succeed. Chapter 954. In a secret cabin of the treasured vessel, Lu Ping found Hu Lili, who was reinscribing talisman markings on the walls of the cabin with a few female disciples. When they saw Lu Ping walk in, the female disciples found an excuse to run out while grinning, and only 2 people remained in the secret cabin. Hu Lili smiled as she looked at Lu Ping, and then she turned around and continued inscribing brand new talisman markings on the cabin walls. Lu Ping walked over and carefully looked at the talisman markings on the cabin walls, and then he said, this is truly complicated. The entire treasured vessel, the hull, the secret cabins, the deck, and even the passageways have to be inscribed with these dense talisman markings, and there can't be the slightest mistake. Hu Lili said with a smile, of course. Moreover, it isn't so easy to inscribe these talisman markings. Not only does it require a considerable cultivation, one's comprehension towards formations must attain the level of a formation master. Lu Ping asked, when do you reckon it will take to complete the inscribing of these talisman markings? Hu Lili frowned and said, I can't say for sure. The grand formation of this treasured vessel is an extremely enormous compound formation. Even though it can't compare to the grand scale of a sect guarding grand formation, it's much more complicated than a sect guarding grand formation. Some of these formations are defensive formations, some are offensive formations, some are solidifying one's body, some are gathering spirit energy, some are suppressing wind and waves, some are converging wind and waves, and so on and so forth. There are a total of over 10 types of formations of various sizes, and every single formation is different. Lu Ping wasn't proficient in formations, and he said, this is truly complicated. Hu Lili said with a smile, that's not all. This is just the general classification of the formations on the treasured vessel. There are many more detailed classifications. For example, among the defensive formations, there are formations to defend against external enemies, formations to protect the structure of the ship, and formations to protect the house from seawater erosion, and so on. These specific formations must all be combined in one place without the slightest conflict, and in the end, the various types of formations must be concentrated and connected to the formation. This way, the formation master on the treasured vessel can concentrate and adjust the different formations on the treasured vessel, so that he can adapt according to the situation. Lu Ping was speechless as he listened, but Hu Lili became more and more excited as she spoke. She continued, some of these formations on the treasured vessel are already known, but there are some that even the master doesn't know about. Not only have I learned a lot from helping the master restore the formations on the treasured vessel these past few years, but the master often says that he has benefited a lot. Lu Ping didn't know much about array formations at all. As he listened to Hu Lili ramble on about the pros and cons of various array formations, even Lu Ping, who had the divine sense of a mid-stage Dharma adept, couldn't help but feel a headache coming on and his temples throbbing. In the end, he simply stopped listening to Hu Lili and focused his attention on Hu Lili's face. He looked left and right, as if he was admiring a peerless treasure. This was a good idea, as it easily resolved the details of the formations that Lu Ping found boring. It didn't take Hu Lili long to notice Lu Ping's actions. Even though Hu Lili was usually a shrewish person, when Lu Ping looked at her like that, she gradually lost her composure. Her voice became softer and softer, and in the end, she threw away the pen knife that she was using to inscribe the formations and said with a red face, "What are you doing? What are you looking at?" Lu Ping's evil plan had succeeded, and he said pretentiously, other than your eyes that are still bright, your face looks a little haggard. Did you not take the divine nourishing pill that I prepared for you earlier?" Hearing Lu Ping say that she looked pale, Hu Lili couldn't help but touch her own face and said, "I took it." "Is it really that bad?" Lu Ping nodded solemnly and said, "Although you still look radiant, compared to before, it's still a little lacking. If I'm not wrong, many of the divine nourishing pills I left for you have been distributed by you, right?" Hu Lili's thoughts were seen through by Lu Ping, and she couldn't help but explain. "Isn't it because the medicinal pills you refined are too few? The talisman markings on this treasured ship are truly too complicated. Moreover, even though we've been ceaselessly repairing these formations and restrictions on the treasured ship during these past few days, it's actually no different to a closed-door cultivation. Everyone's comprehension in formations can be described as advancing by leaps and bounds, so everyone naturally wasn't willing to waste time and poured all their energy into it. Even though it's very tiring, it's truly nothing compared to everyone's gains. For the sake of not affecting everyone's repair of the treasured ship due to the consumption of divine perception, these medicinal pills were naturally distributed." When Lu Ping heard what Hu Lili said, he knew that she probably hadn't rested for a single moment during these 5 years, and his fingers couldn't help but slide on Hu Lili's beautiful face as he couldn't help but feel extremely pitiful in his heart. Hu Lili was greatly embarrassed and annoyed by Lu Ping's intimate actions, and she wanted to stretch out her hand to push his hand away, yet she couldn't bear to part with this moment of tenderness, so she could only blush as her eyes that were like autumn water slanted at Lu Ping while avoiding his gaze. Lu Ping was greatly amused when he saw this, and he seized the opportunity when Hu Lili wasn't paying attention to lightly peck on her face before laughing mischievously as he dodged Hu Lili's slap. "You're courting death." Hu Lili's slap was originally just for show, but a small part of her mind was actually focused on the secret cabin behind Lu Ping. Seeing that no one had seen it, she fiercely glared at Lu Ping before lowering her head with a blush and not saying anything. Lu Ping looked at Hu Lili's exposed snow-white neck that was gradually dyed with a layer of captivating red, and then he took out 2 jade bottles with a grin as he said, "This time I've prepared a new elixir for you, and it's much better than the profound spirit pill from before. Not only can it quickly recover the loss of divine sense, but it's also greatly beneficial for the recovery and growth of divine sense after it's damaged." Lu Ping's words had indeed distracted Hu Lili, freeing her from her previous embarrassment. She asked curiously, what kind of elixir is this?" Hu Lili saw that Lu Ping's teasing look was about to make a scene, and Lu Ping hurriedly begged for mercy. It's true, this is a divine spirit pill that I had painstakingly begged from Uncle Master Tianqin. Although it's only a half step to the Dharma stage, its recovery and nurturing of divine sense is many times better than the profound spirit pill from before." Hu Lili snatched the jade bottle from Lu Ping's hand and gave Lu Ping a look that said, "At least you know what's good for you." Only then did she happily place the jade bottle into the crystal storage ring that Lu Ping had specially asked Chen Lian to make for him. For the sake of this crystal ring on Hu Lili's hand, Lu Ping did not hesitate to use a heaven-level spirit item to exchange for a spatial crystal from Tian Xiang Laozu. He also made Chen Lian waste many spiritual materials to make this storage ring the color of a crystal. Using Chen Lian's words at that time, it was, "You have nothing better to do. You wasted so many high-grade spiritual materials just to make this storage ring the color of a crystal." Lu Ping could not be bothered to explain to these people who did not know anything. He took this crystal storage ring that was made to look like the one in his memory and rushed back to Huangli Island excitedly. He gave this ring to Hu Lili, and then solemnly put the ring on Hu Lili's finger, saying, "From today onwards, we are officially path companions." Hu Lili, who was originally very happy because of the beautiful storage ring that Lu Ping had given her, was immediately enraged when she heard Lu Ping's words. What do you mean by officially? Did you not treat me as your path companion before? Lu Ping could only cover his head and flee like a rat. Seeing that Hu Lili kept the jade bottle, Lu Ping took out another 2 jade bottles and said, "These 2 bottles contain soul accumulation pills. If there are other array masters who ask for it in the future, you can just take it. That soul formation pill is not easy to make, so you have to keep it for yourself." Hu Lili smiled tenderly and said, "I know, you stingy person. When did our treasure boy become so stingy?" Although Hu Lili teased Lu Ping, her heart was as sweet as honey. Although Lu Ping's pills were divided according to the quality, he kept the good ones for himself and did not forget about others. This allowed Hu Lili to have more leeway among the other array masters. After accompanying Hu Lili in the treasure ship for half a day, Lu Ping finally came out from the sea cliff at the back of Heaven's Spirit Mountain. Unexpectedly, just as Lu Ping came out of the forbidden area, before he could reminisce about the warmth he had with Hu Lili, a person who made his good mood go down the drain walked towards him. "Junior brother Lu, I heard sect head Marshal Uncle's instructions. What good things do you have to give me?" Enlightened Xian Wei looked at Lu Ping with a face full of smiles, which made Lu Ping feel disgusted. Lu Ping naturally didn't have anything to give him, but Lu Ping understood his sect headmaster's intention. Helplessly, he took out a few jade slips from his storage artifact and threw them to him. "Take a look at the contents first." Enlightened Xian Wei didn't know what Lu Ping meant. He took the jade slips and looked at them one by one. However, every time he looked at one, Enlightened Xian Wei's expression didn't get more and more excited, but it got worse and worse. When he finished looking at the last one, Enlightened Xian Wei's face was almost like crying. "It can't be. This is the Crystal Palace's secret or seeking secret technique. The Crystal Palace doesn't teach it to outsiders. How could it be in Junior Brother Lu's hands? It can't be you. Lu Ping's face darkened as he said, "You should know the relationship between this. If the slightest news is leaked, you should know the consequences." Enlightened Xian Wei said timidly, "I don't want these things, okay?" Lu Ping swung his hand and walked into the distance. "Don't want? It's too late." Enlightened Xian Wei wanted to chase after him, but he realized that Lu Ping had already walked far away while he was still in a daze. Enlightened Xian Wei felt sorry for himself and could only put his attention back on the few jade slips in his hand. He changed his divine thoughts to look at the contents and said, "Well, both master and disciple plotted against me together. What is this? I killed a cultivator from the Crystal Palace. Moreover, it's a cultivator who possesses the inheritance of the Crystal Palace's or seeking secret technique. Will the Crystal Palace let it go? It's fine if the master and disciple bear the responsibility for this matter, but how can they drag me into this as well?" Chapter 955. Enlightened Master Xian Wei was an out-and-out bitch, or perhaps it could be said that he was an anomaly among the third-generation disciples of Junling. The barren North Sea had similarly restricted the development of a mind-seeking master like Enlightened Master Xian Wei. Even though Enlightened Master Xian Wei had some innate talent as a mind-seeking master and had some achievements according to the bits and pieces of information regarding mind-seeking masters that were passed down in Junling, he proclaimed himself as the #1 mind-seeking master in Junling. Saying that he was the #1 wasn't the slightest bit of exaggeration because he was the only one among the tens of thousands of cultivators in Jinling who had a special liking for mind-seeking masters. Regardless of whether it was because of this title of #1, or because Jinling didn't have the helplessness of other mind-seeking masters, Enlightened Master Xian Wei's reputation had spread far and wide. He was really sought after by many people and became a delicious cake in the eyes of many cultivators who went out to explore the sea. However, this Taoist profound Wei's understanding of mind-seeking masters was just a smattering of knowledge. Most of the time, he was just an armchair strategist in front of cultivators who knew nothing about mind-seeking masters. He was blowing his trumpet and making the others prostrate themselves before him. However, good times didn't last long. Following the invitation of many cultivators who went out to explore, enlightened Master Xian Wei made use of this failure to find mind-seeking masters to inevitably have doubts towards his title as a mind-seeking master. However, enlightened Master Xian Wei naturally couldn't lose his prestige. He immediately retorted that it wasn't because he couldn't find mind-seeking master, but it was because the place that he was invited to didn't have any mind-seeking master at all. Since no one had found a mind-seeking master, there was naturally no evidence to prove that enlightened Master Xian Wei was a fake, so everyone could only drop the matter. After that, enlightened Master Xian Wei relied on his half-baked mind-seeking method to point at a few earth veins by chance. Moreover, he really found a mind-seeking master from there. Even though the quality of these mind-seeking masters wasn't considered good and the reserves weren't high, it was enough for enlightened Master Xian Wei to become complacent and insufferably arrogant. There weren't many cultivators of the same level that could enter his eyes. After all, Daoist Profound Wei's ability was too extreme, and when it came to searching for ore veins, everyone had no choice but to look for this one and only ore seeker. But what was even more excessive was that along with the few successes in mine exploration, this mine seeker's greed grew bigger and bigger. Previously, when he looked for him to explore a mine, he merely asked for some spirit stones as payment. But now, it had already multiplied by countless times. Moreover, once a mine was found, this Daoist Profound Wei would no longer ask for spirit stones, but a fixed share of the mine. This caused many cultivators to be extremely furious, yet they could do nothing about it. Not to mention that, it just so happened that this Daoist Master Profound Micro was a cowardly person, and it was unavoidable for him to encounter various dangers when he went out to search for ore veins with other cultivators. However, every time danger arrived, this Daoist Master Profound Micro would hide at the side and not lend the slightest assistance. Conversely, every time something went wrong, he would be the first to flee. In the end, even though this Daoist Master Profound Micro obtained the nickname of a coward, his ability to flee was honed to the point of being extremely skilled. Later on, it was Yao Yong and Xian Ling who returned from the Heartlands, and they truly couldn't bear to see this Daoist Master Profound Micro's arrogant expression all day long. Moreover, the two of them had been in the Heartlands for a long time, and they'd witnessed the methods of those true mind seekers in the Heartlands, and it was completely different from this Daoist Master Profound Micro. The two of them discussed it in private, so they set up a trap to invite Daoist Master Profound Micro to explore. The two of them first found a few locations that had confirmed the location of the mine veins, and then they pretended to invite Daoist Master Profound Micro to explore. Every time Daoist Master Profound Micro said that there were no mines here because he couldn't find anything, the cultivators would immediately pretend that they'd accidentally found the mine veins. This happened a few times consecutively, and Daoist Master Profound Micro finally realized that he was fooled by others, but it was already too late. The entire Jinling already knew that this Daoist Master Profound Micro was a swindler, and many cultivators who once invited him to explore the veins claimed that they'd teach him a lesson. All of a sudden, Daoist Master Profound Micro became the target of scorn, and his days these few years were really miserable. These things naturally couldn't be hidden from the few Laozu of his sect. Even though this Daoist Master Profound Micro's character wasn't good, and his ability to search for mines was also sloppy, but he had a unique skill, and that was to clearly judge the reserves of spirit ores in the known mine veins and the underground direction of the mine veins. Perhaps it was because of this Daoist Master Profound Micro's greed, every time a spirit vein was discovered, the reserves after excavation and the underground direction of the mine veins were almost the same as Daoist Master Profound Micro's previous judgment. This was also what made everyone in Jinling click their tongues in wonder. Even though this Daoist Master Profound Micro's reputation was unbearable, it wasn't that he didn't have any real ability. What really made Daoist Master Profound Micro's reputation in this area was when the Spirit Stone vein was discovered on Frost Island. At that time, because the island was covered by 1,000 years of cold ice, even though they found the source of the Spirit Stone vein, they were still unable to determine the reserves of the Spirit Stone vein. At that time, Daoist Master Profound Micro had already started to consider himself as a mine seeker. Under the situation where there were no tigers in the mountain, Taoist Master Profound Micro was really forced to do something beyond his capabilities. However, soon after, Taoist Master Profound Micro's people thought that the spirit stone vein on Frost Island was very likely a large quality mine. In the end, when the news spread, it caused Jinling to gain the upper hand in the distribution of the spirit stone vein on Frost Island. It also caused Lu Ping and the others to wantonly occupy territories on the island at the expense of clashing with the cultivators of other sections. In the end, even a middle-sized spirit stone vein was discovered and occupied by Lu Ping. Taoist Master Profound Micro became famous because of this. After that, no matter what kind of mine vein he found, Taoist Master Profound Micro would be able to accurately estimate the amount of cultivation resources stored in the mine vein. He could also accurately judge the direction of the mine vein according to the source of the mine vein. Even though Taoist Master Profound Micro's tricks as a mine seeker had been exposed and his days in Jinling were extremely difficult, no one could deny Taoist Master Profound Micro's ability. Even though everyone in Jinling was extremely disgusted with his character, every time they found a mine vein, they had no choice but to find him to evaluate it. This was also why even though Lu Tianling knew enlightened Master Xian Wei didn't have a good reputation, he still had no choice but to hand over the inheritance to enlightened Master Xian Wei after learning that Lu Ping had obtained the Crystal Palace's Mine Finder inheritance. When Lu Ping saw this guy come here to ask for the inheritance of a mine seeker, the first thing that came to his mind was that with this guy's courage, if he knew that the inheritance in his hands was from the hands of the Crystal Palace's mine seeker, would he be so scared that he would wet his pants? However, this was his teacher's order, and Lu Ping couldn't disobey it. Thus, he could only throw a few jade slips to Taoist Master Profound Micro and leave quickly. Out of sight, out of mind. His teacher must know this guy's personality, so he would definitely be on guard. After Lu Ping left Tianling Mountain, he returned to Huangli Island to wait for news of Wang Qi and the others entering the seven-star grotto heaven. Also, after Lu Shuheng Laozu's death, Xianling sect tried its best to suppress the news. So far, it had not caused a huge uproar in the North Sea's cultivation world. There were undoubtedly two things that attracted the most attention in the North Sea's cultivation world. One was the opening of the seven-star grotto heaven. Although the opening of the seven-star grotto heaven was only a stage for the blood condensation disciples of the various sects, several extremely rare treasures would appear in the seven-star grotto heaven. This time, a large number of forces outside the North Sea would undoubtedly participate in the seven-star grotto heaven, which undoubtedly attracted the attention of many cultivators in the North Sea. The second thing was undoubtedly the spirit pill exchange held on the island where the North Sea's alchemy family, the Liao family, was located. The head of the Liao family, Liao Ruanjia, had successfully condensed his Dharma power last year. After the death of the North Sea's Qiao family's Laozu, the Liao family became the 12th small force in the North Sea to have the Dharma power Laozu. According to the North Sea's tradition, every time a cultivator broke through to the Dharma manifestation stage, the force that the cultivator belonged to would hold a grand celebration to show off their strength and build connections. Especially in terms of building connections, the thousand-year-old alchemy family, the Liao family, undoubtedly had the advantage, especially after Liao Ruanjia broke through to the Dharma manifestation stage. This advantage was even more obvious, and it had the potential to replace the declining North Sea's Qiao family. The Liao family simply turned Liao Ruanjia and Laozu's Dharma manifestation conference into a spirit pill exchange. Not only would this increase the Liao family's influence, but it would also allow the Liao family to obtain a lot of benefits. Just by looking at the various spirit pills the Liao family disciples were selling, one could see how much effort the Liao family had put into this. Of course, the Liao family's spirit pill exchange wasn't something that just anyone could enter. Not only did foreign cultivators need to have an invitation from the Liao family, but in order to better win over the various forces of the North Sea, every invitation they sent out was documented. Even the Liao family disciples knew what kind of spirit pills they traded with the Liao family disciples. Similarly, even if the Liao family disciples wanted to enter the spirit pill exchange, they would need to use their family's identity token and receive special permission from the Liao family elders to enter. Only then would they be able to sell their own pills to the cultivators of the various sections. At this time, a Liao family disciple was taking out various spirit pills from a bag and selling them to the cultivators of the various sections. At this time, a cultivator from the Blue Sea sect walked by. The Liao family disciple's eyes lit up. He recognized this cultivator. He was a disciple of Wang Shiqing Laozu, who had been sent by the Blue Sea sect to participate in the Dharma Manifestation Conference. This person was standing beside Wang Shiqing Laozu. There were only 2 Dharma Manifestations cultivators among the various sects participating in the Dharma Manifestation Conference. One was Laozu from a small sect in the North Sea that was on good terms with the Liao family, and the other was Wang Shiqing Laozu from the Blue Sea sect. As the only 2 Dharma Manifestations cultivators from other sects participating in the Dharma Manifestation Conference, the Liao family was naturally very honored. As a disciple of Wang Shiqing Laozu, he naturally received extra care from the Liao family. Senior Su Xiu, I am Liao Xingchen, a disciple of the Liao family. This is the 7 vitality pill that I have refined. Do you like it? When the Blue Sea sect disciple, Su Xiu, heard that the name of the pill that the Liao family disciple had refined actually had the word Xiu in it, he immediately stopped in his tracks. He raised his head and looked at the Liao family disciple. He said, I don't think this pill is very good. Do you have anything else? The Liao family elders had long ordered that they must take special care of the Blue Sea sect cultivators. Liao Xingchen naturally remembered this. Hearing this, he hurriedly carried his bag to a place where there was no one around and opened it up. He said, all the pills that I have refined are here. Senior, please take a look. If there is anything that you like, please let me know. The elders have ordered that we must satisfy the Blue Sea sect elders. You're quite interesting, Junior. Others use their storage celestial devices to store these bottles and jars, but you use such a big package. Do you think you're setting up a stall in the market? Many cultivators in the distance heard this and looked over. When they saw the bottles and jars that Liao Xingchen placed on the ground, they revealed a trace of disdain. It seemed that this Liao Xingchen was a failure in the Liao family. A dignified blood condensation realm alchemist didn't even have a storage bag. Liao Xingchen's face turned red and he embarrassedly laughed. This Su Xiu was just casually talking. Out of politeness, he flipped through the bag and looked at the bag a few more times. He said, although the rank of the pills is a bit low, the quality is not bad. It seems that you are very talented in alchemy. How about this? How many spirit stones do you have? I want all of them. Really? Liao Xingchen was overjoyed. He quickly took out the jade bottles and wanted to give them to Su Xiu. However, there were too many jade bottles in the bag. He couldn't take them all in a short time. Su Xiu looked around and realized that no one was paying attention to them. Thus, he said impatiently, all right. Just wrap these up as before. Don't tell me you can't bear to part with this lousy bag of yours. I'm willing to part with them. Liao Xingchen hurriedly wrapped these bottles and cans in a package and handed it to Su Xiu. However, after Su Xiu took the package, he put it into the storage artifact he carried on his body, threw a bag of spirit stones to him, and then turned and hurried away. Liao Xingchen looked at Su Xiu's back as he walked away. Then, he let out a sigh of relief as if he had completed a mission. He pulled out a piece of cloth from his clothes, and a parcel that was exactly the same as the one from before appeared in his hand. Then, he grabbed the parcel and leisurely returned to the crowd of the trading meet. Then, he walked out of the venue. A Liao family cultivator saw the empty bag in Liao Xingchen's hand and smiled. Hey, brother Xingchen, you're in luck. You sold all the pills. Liao Xingchen immediately smiled and said, oh, it's brother Xinghai. My luck is good today. A senior has taken a fancy to all the pills. Then, Liao Xingchun shook the bag in his hand proudly. 3 days later, Songhai sect and Xianling sect suddenly fought in the Northwest Sea. The Songhai sect cultivators who were secretly heading to the Northwest Sea to excavate the spiritual material vein were ambushed by Xianling sect cultivators who were lying in ambush nearby. By the time Laozu and Laozu of the two sects realized something was wrong and showed up, the Songhai sect cultivators had suffered heavy casualties while Xianling sect cultivators had also suffered heavy losses. Enlightened Master Su Xiu, who led the Songhai sect cultivators to excavate the spiritual material vein, died on the spot. After an urgent discussion between the two sides, Wang Shiqing, Laozu, and Feng Xutao of Xianling sect came to Liao family island angrily. When the three sides confronted each other, the rapping became the key. However, that Liao clan's little cultivator, Liao Xingchun, admitted to selling the medicinal pill to Su Xiu, but denied selling the medicinal pill along with the wrapping to Su Xiu. Su Xiu was dead, so there was no evidence. Many Liao family disciples and cultivators who participated in the elixir gathering saw the empty bag that Liao Xingchun shook out. The situation was not in Songhai sect's favor. By now, LV Shuheng's death was known to the world. Especially after learning that the Crystal Palace was also involved, Wang Shiqing was even more terrified. In a fit of rage, Wang Shiqing took the risk and suddenly grabbed Liao family's minor repairs, slapped him on the head, and was about to use the soul-searching technique. The entire Liao family was furious, but they saw that Liao Xingchun couldn't resist the pain of soul-searching, and suddenly died while foaming at the mouth. However, Wang Shiqing didn't pay attention to why Liao Xingchun was so weak, because from this short period of soul-searching, he obtained a piece of news that made him very happy. Chapter 956. Wang Shiqing, your Songhai sect has gone too far. Although the Songhai sect was one of the three major sects of the North Sea, and its strength was many times stronger than the Liao family, Liao Ruinjia could no longer hold back when Wang Shiqing humiliated a Liao family cultivator in front of him. He reached out and tried to snatch Liao Xingchuan's body from Wang Shiqing's hands. Although Wang Shiqing was holding Liao Xingchuan's body, he had been in the Dharma phase for many years. How could Liao Ruinjia, who had used tricks to condense his Dharma power, compare to him? With just a gentle press, Wang Shiqing had neutralized Liao Ruinjia's attack. He sneered, Liao family head, are you trying to silence me and destroy the evidence? Liao Ruinjia knew that he was no match for Wang Shiqing. Snatching Liao Xingchuan's body from Wang Shiqing's hands was simply wishful thinking. When he heard Wang Shiqing's words, he said angrily, my Liao family disciple has already died in your hands. The old man just didn't want you to humiliate his body. Wang Shiqing smiled coldly and stretched out his hand. Liao Xingchuan's head exploded amidst the screams and curses of the Liao family members. Then, a green light condensed in Wang Shiqing's hand, and a blurry image began to appear in the air. Many of the Liao clan's hot-blooded cultivators could no longer restrain their anger and jumped out to fight Wang Shiqing. However, they were all stopped in midair by Liao Ruinjia and thrown back behind him. Family head. Family head, are you going to let the Songhai sect bully you like this? Family head, why don't we invite, shut up. What nonsense are you talking about? An agitated late-core forging cultivator had just opened his mouth when Liao Ruinjia and the Liao family elders angrily rebuked him. Wang Shiqing chuckled and said, who do you want to invite? An expert from the Middle Earth? As soon as Wang Shiqing finished speaking, Feng Xutao's expression froze. He saw the blurry image from the green light in Wang Shiqing's hand gradually become clearer. It was in a guest room, with a man in brown sitting at the head of the table, while Liao Ruinjia was seated below. The brown-robed man looked at Liao Ruinjia and said, Brother Ruinjia, it seems that your Dharma realm cultivation has been consolidated well. I heard that there is a big celebration for a cultivator in the North Sea who has broken through to the Dharma realm. Let me congratulate you first. Liao Ruanjia was obviously very respectful towards the man in brown. Upon hearing this, he quickly said, "Brother Ruanjia, you are too kind. The North Sea is a poor place, and it is already a big deal for a Dharma adept to appear. Compared to the main family, Ruanjia's cultivation level is nothing. If Brother Ruanjia had not helped on behalf of the main family this time, the old man would not have been able to form a Dharma power." The brown-robed man nodded, as if satisfied that Liao Ruanjia knew how to appreciate his family. He continued, "I heard that a core-forging assassin has appeared in the North Sea recently. He actually caused the entire Xianling sect to panic, and even the Dharma adepts could not do anything to him. Is this true?" Liao Ruanjia nodded and smiled. "That is correct. This person is the abandoned disciple of Xinling, Yin Xianchu. He is the offspring of a human and a demon. His parents were killed by Xianling sect's Dao Shi. This time, he returned to the North Sea to seek revenge. However, it seems that he has taken out his anger on the entire Xianling sect." The man in brown, Liao Runjian, snorted coldly and said, Xinling does not know how to cherish such a disciple. It seems that the number one sect in the North Sea is only So. Liao Ruanjia said, "Xinling has been on the rise all these years, but Xianling sect has not been having a good time. All these years, it seems that they have been receiving help from the Crystal Palace, and the Crystal Palace has also taken this opportunity to carry out their activities in the North Sea." The man in brown laughed coldly and said, "This Xianling sect is just a lackey of the Crystal Palace. Years ago, the Crystal Palace sent Peng Shiyuan to infiltrate our family and steal several important items, especially a map that is related to the Fallen Heavens Wall. It was a treasure that the ancestors of our family exchanged for by sacrificing their lives. Before Peng Shiyuan left, he even poisoned the elixirs in our family's storage, causing the family to lose more than 10 alchemists. After that, Peng Shiyuan was chased by our family and fled to the North Sea to seek shelter from Xianling sect. These two sects are in cahoots with each other. It's best that they are dead. If the old man has the chance, he must kill a few of them to comfort the souls of our family's alchemists in heaven." The scene ended here, obviously because of Liao Xingchuan's sudden death. However, this was enough in Wang Xiqing's eyes. Wang Xiqing laughed coldly, but a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He said, "I didn't expect the Liao family to be a branch of the Lu family, the number one alchemist family in Middle Mainland. I didn't expect your family to have a feud with the Crystal Palace and Xianling sect for a long time. You killed fellow Daoist Lu Shuheng and the Crystal Palace cultivators, and then you put the blame on our sect. What a good plan." At this moment, Liao Ruanjia was so angry that he couldn't speak. At this moment, he remembered that Liao Xingchun came from a poor family, so he became a disciple in the family. He didn't know when Liao Xingchun saw the scene of him meeting with the cultivators of the Central Plains. Hearing that Wang Xiqing was determined to put the blame on the Liao family for killing LV Shuheng and the Crystal Palace cultivators, Liao Ruanjia didn't dare to accept this. He said anxiously, "Nonsense. How can the Liao family kill LV Shuheng?" At this moment, Feng Shutao suddenly said, "Of course you are no match for junior brother LV, but it's hard to say for the Lu family behind you." At this moment, Liao Ruanjia had calmed down. He gradually realized that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what it was. When he heard Feng Shutao's words, he immediately said, "Even so, it's just your speculation. How can you be sure that the people were killed by the Liao family? Are you going to rely on a few complaints? Complaints are the truth. Regardless of whether the Qunanjinren was killed by the Liao family should be punished for their evil intentions." The aura of a Dharma adept suddenly exploded from the body of a late core forging adept beside Feng Shutao. The power of this aura was so strong that even Feng Shutao, who was standing beside him, could not help but frown as he moved 2 steps to the side. Wang Xiqing and Liao Ruanjia, on the other hand, were shocked. This adept who had suddenly released his level of practice was only an early Dharma adept who was at the same level of practice as them, but the aura was so strong that it was beyond compare. Previously, neither of them had noticed that there was a Dharma adept hiding next to Feng Shutao. Judging from his appearance, he seemed to have only cultivated for a short period of time. Since when did Xianling's sect have such a young talent besides Ouyang Weijian? Your water crystal palace has always been this domineering and domineering. Could it be that my Lu family is really afraid of you? Just as the young adept finished speaking, another Dharma adept's aura rose from the Liao family's island. This aura was even more experienced than the young man's. It was a mid-Dharma adept. The brown-robed adept, Lu Runjian, whom everyone had seen in Wang Shiqing's soul-searching mirror image, descended from the sky and landed next to Liao Ruanjia. The aura around him was turbulent, and he was facing off against the early Dharma adept from the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace adept laughed coldly and said, "Indeed, there is a hidden force. I originally thought that the Liao family was not strong enough to kill Uncle LV Shuheng. I did not expect that they would have a mid-Dharma adept as their backup. This means that the deaths of Uncle LV Shuheng and our sect's Kunan Jinren are undeniable. Uncle Feng, let's go." Feng Shutao did not say a word and turned to follow the Crystal Palace adept. Seeing this, Wang Shiqing knew that there was no point in staying. However, the fact that the Liao family had hidden such a strong backup from the Lu family would definitely affect the situation in the North Sea. He had to rush back to the sect as soon as possible to report to the Dharma adepts in the sect. Lu Runjian saw that the two sides had retreated. Xianling's sect and the Crystal Palace might not come looking for him for a while, but the hatred between the two sides would be difficult to resolve in the future. Thus, he said, whether you believe it or not, the Lu family is definitely not the culprit who killed LV Shuheng and the Crystal Palace adept. What happened on the Liao family's island quickly spread throughout the North Sea practice world. No one would have thought that the death of LV Shuheng and the Crystal Palace adept would lead to a direct confrontation between the Crystal Palace and the top alchemy family of Central Plains in this small North Sea. The death of LV Shuheng had shaken the entire North Sea practice world, and the emergence of the big forces of East Sea and Central Plains made the situation of the entire North Sea practice world even more confusing. Many practitioners in the North Sea wondered if there were more hidden forces from the outside world in the North Sea practice world, just like the Liao family of the North Sea. It was already 3 days later that Lu Ping received the news of the Liao family's island. After receiving the news, Lu Ping's heart was heavy. This was obviously a series of traps set by Master to get rid of the suspicion of himself and his sect. Liao Xingchen and even Wang Shiqing's attendant disciple, Su Xiu, might be the secret agents that Jinling had carefully placed in these two sections. These two agents could be said to have sacrificed their lives to make up for their mistakes. Lu Ping walked to the top of Tianling Mountain and looked at the inconspicuous entrance in the distance. This was the entrance to Jinling's first legacy's grotto, the True Spirit Grotto. He did not know why Master Tianxiang had called him here. Lu Ping walked to the entrance of the True Spirit Grotto and hesitated for a moment. Just as he was about to enter, his expression changed. He turned around and said respectfully, "Greetings, Master Tianxiang." Tianxiang Laozu's appearance was still as silent as before. He looked at Lu Ping and said with a smile, "According to the rules of our sect, practitioners who have advanced to the Dharma stage are qualified to enter Jinling's grotto and choose a treasure left behind by the previous Jinling Laozu when he passed away. Now that you have the right, come and have a look at the True Spirit Grotto." Lu Ping's body trembled. He knew that the secret of his advancement to the Dharma stage could be hidden from practitioners below the mid-Dharma stage, but it could not be hidden from the great Dharma adepts. Thus, he said embarrassedly, "I just don't want to attract so much attention." Tianxiang Laozu also smiled and said, "That's right, at this time, the old man and your master also don't want you to be too much attention." Chapter 957. True Spirit Wonderland was the oldest and most important inheritance of Jinling. Jinling didn't have enough resources to form a huge inheritance like the Ying Tian sect, so most of Jinling's important inheritance was concentrated in True Spirit Wonderland. Jade Cave Wonderland was different from Jade Cave Wonderland. Most of the inheritance in Jade Cave Wonderland was left behind by Jinling's core forging cultivators. Jinling's Dharma Laozu would choose to return to after their lifespans were exhausted. Therefore, True Spirit Wonderland was not only the inheritance of Jinling, but also the burial place of Jinling's Dharma Laozu. Outside True Spirit Wonderland, Lu Tianling rushed over after seeing Lu Ping enter Winter. "Uncle, did he go in?" Tian Xiang nodded and said, "He went in. Let's stay quiet for a while." "Have you rearranged the spies in Songhai sect and Liao family island?" Tian Ling sighed and said, "I'm already making arrangements. However, I don't know how long it will take for me to become the Patriarch's guest hall sweeper and a Dharma idol attendant again." Tian Xiang's countenance didn't change as he replied, "For a sect to rise up, there would naturally be sacrifices. Which sect didn't have a path of bloodshed? It's just that some of them were in the light, while others were in the dark. Even if those in the light died in battle, their names would be passed down through the generations. But for those in the dark, even if they accomplished great merits, they could only remain nameless. In fact, even if they died, they could only become a wandering ghost, with no true identity." Tian Xiang paused and seemed to feel that this topic was too heavy, so he said, "The Dark Hall has always been under the control of Xian Yin. Now that you are the head of the sect, it's unclear who is right and who is wrong. It's just that there is no other suitable person in the sect. Tian Feng is too wild, Tian Lin is too lazy, Tian Qin is too arrogant, Tian Shan is too righteous, Tian Cheng is too rough, Tian Shu is originally suitable, but he has great ambition but little talent." Tian Ling pondered for a moment and said, "Martial uncle, perhaps you should consider the third-generation disciples. Nowadays, many of the third-generation disciples are gradually growing up. There are nearly 20 of them who have advanced to the late stage of the core forging realm. They should be given more responsibilities." Tian Xiang's eyes brightened. "Oh, you have a suitable candidate in mind?" Tian Ling hesitated for a moment before saying, "Currently, among the third-generation disciples of our sect, other than Lu Ping, only brother Xian Yin's disciple, Yin Xianchu, has advanced to the 9th stage of core forging. His level of practice is sufficient, and he has also gone through many battles, so his level of killing is sufficient as well. He has been on the run for many years in the North Sea, and even Dharma adepts are unable to catch him. His intelligence is sufficient as well." Celestial Phenomenon Laozu stretched out his hand to stop Celestial Phenomenon Laozu from speaking. "Can he return now?" The heavenly spirit was somewhat unwilling as she said, "But this child still has to come back in the end. Junior brother Xian Yin's lineage can't be severed from the sect just like that." Celestial Phenomenon Laozu did not dwell on this issue any longer. Instead, he changed the topic and asked, "What about the mixed mineral veins in the northwest? Xianling sect and Songhai sect are still quarreling. There have been several conflicts between the disciples of both sects, but the high-level practitioners have a tacit understanding and have not taken any action. There are no major casualties on either side. I think both sides are restraining themselves." Celestial Phenomenon nodded and said, "Looks like it's time for our sect to take action. It took so much effort to muddy the waters, how can we let them clear it up so quickly? It is said that the mixed mineral veins contain several types of extremely rare spiritual materials, which are urgently needed for the repair of the treasure ship. Immediately unite with the other sects to pressure the two sects to share the profits. I think the other sects can't wait any longer. This is also a way to alleviate our current situation of being isolated." Tian Ling Laozu nodded, but still said, "Won't this make the two sects feel that this was originally a trap of our sect, and now we have finally jumped out?" Celestial Phenomenon shook his head and said, "Whether we jump out or not will be suspected, but it is normal for us to jump out. If we don't jump out to fight for it, they will be able to confirm it." A few days later, Jinling joined forces with the Hai Yan sect, Shui Yan Pavilion, and a few other sects to the Northwest Sea. They requested the Songhai sect and Xianling sect to open up the mining of the mixed mineral veins and share the profits. After a series of secret games, Xianling sect, due to the death of Lu Shuheng Laozu and the support of the Crystal Palace, finally obtained a 20% share of the entire spiritual veins. Jinling and the Songhai sect obtained a total of 30%, the other 6 sects divided the remaining 30%, and the remaining 20% was obtained by the 12 small sects who rushed over after hearing the news. This time, it seemed that Xianling sect was the final winner, but Xianling sect did not feel happy at all. Originally, the entire spiritual veins belonged to Xianling sect, but now, not only did they lose a Dharma adept, they only obtained a fifth of the spiritual veins. At least from Xianling sect's point of view, they were the ones who suffered the greatest loss this time. After Jinling joined forces with the other sects, the relationship between them and each other had eased. This was especially so during the crucial moment when the Crystal Palace adept Song Shiwei suddenly appeared to support Xianling sect. This caused the sects in the North Sea to be on high alert. This alertness undoubtedly made the sects worry that Jinling would become the next Fei Ling sect, and they were also worried that the Crystal Palace would fully intervene in the North Sea dispute. Compared to the potential threat of Jinling's rise, the Crystal Palace was the real threat that they had to face first. In the True Spirit Grotto Heaven, Lu Ping walked casually. From time to time, he could see tombstones hidden in a patch of green. On the tombstones, Laozu's name and life story were engraved. Every time Lu Ping came across a tombstone, he would stop and read the detailed information about Laozu. This information often recorded the changes in the North Sea's cultivation world over the past tens of thousands of years. If he could read all the tombstones of the Dharma adepts in the True Spirit Grotto Heaven, it would be a very detailed history of the North Sea's cultivation world. Along the way, Lu Ping saw many treasures, including some that tempted Laozu. However, Lu Ping could only choose one. Unfortunately, after comparing them, Lu Ping felt that these treasures were not his fortuitous encounters. When celestial phenomenon Laozu entered the True Spirit Grotto Heaven, he had made it clear that the treasures he chose depended on his fortuitous encounters. Even so, Lu Ping at least learned a lot about the secrets of the North Sea's cultivation world over the past tens of thousands of years while he was admiring the engravings on each tombstone. In this True Spirit Grotto Heaven, apart from some inheritance and treasures that were hidden in some mysterious places, in front of every tombstone, there would be one or more treasures that were used by the ancestor when he was still alive. This was also a rule that Jinling's sect had followed for generations. Before each Laozu passed away, he would bury at least one treasure that he had used when he was alive. This was to leave something useful for the descendants of Jinling. In the future, when Jinling encountered danger, these buried treasures might be the key to saving the situation. Although Lu Ping walked along the way, he did not touch any of the treasures placed in front of the tombstone. These things could be said to be the last resort of Jinling and the last contribution that Laozu left for Jinling. Although some of the treasures were not precious, they could not be chosen by greed. This was because Lu Ping knew that he would not be able to transform into a spirit like the only great Ginseng Laozu in the history of Jinling. In the future, he would also have to leave a treasure in front of his tombstone. Putting himself in Lu Ping's shoes, Lu Ping did not want the painstaking efforts that he had left for his descendants to be wasted because of greed. Lu Ping stood in the middle of the cave and slowly closed his eyes. His powerful divine telekinesis swept in all directions like flowing mercury. In Lu Ping's divine telekinesis, almost everything in the cave could be seen. Although the tombstones in the cave looked unusually messy in the beginning, as if they were just places with decent scenery in the cave, in Lu Ping's divine telekinesis, these tombstones that belonged to Laozu, the manifestation of Jinling, had formed an extremely exquisite formation. Each tombstone was an extremely important node in this formation. In the perception of Lu Ping's divine telekinesis, there was a ball of essence condensed on top of each tombstone. These hundreds of balls of essence were connected according to the formation, causing the entire formation to look like a ferocious beast that was ready to attack. Once the time was right, the formation would be activated, and it would definitely unleash an earth-shattering power. Every ball of essence on the tombstones was condensed from the last essence of Laozu, the manifestation of Dharma, who had passed away in a sitting posture. This ball of essence was preserved through the formation. Once it exploded, the entire cave would definitely collapse. Therefore, this was also prepared as a last resort for Jinling. Originally, this formation would only be activated when Jinling encountered the most critical moment. However, just as Lu Ping's divine telekinesis reached its limit, the entire formation suddenly shook, and then immediately returned to normal. The entire formation shook for too short a time, causing Lu Ping to think that his divine telekinesis was momentarily dazed. However, just as Lu Ping was about to retract his divine telekinesis, the entire cave shook again. This time, the shaking was even more intense, but it also allowed Lu Ping to clearly feel that it was not the cave that was shaking. Instead, the entire formation seemed to have been triggered, which was why Lu Ping felt as if the entire world was shaking. However, how could the formation formed by the tombstones be triggered? Lu Ping was already wondering. However, at this moment, the entire formation began to shake for the third time. This time, almost every tombstone was shaking violently. Under Lu Ping's fearful perception, the balls of essence that had condensed above the tombstones were separated from each ball of essence. Then, they followed an invisible line in the sky and condensed above the formation above the formation. More than 100 balls of essence gathered together and exploded with a strong light in the sky above the cave. A vast aura rushed towards Lu Ping. This aura was all too familiar to Lu Ping. After the light in the center of the cave dissipated, a silver-white bead flew directly towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping opened his palm and the silver bead landed in Lu Ping's hand with a gentle aura. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Could this be the opportunity for him to enter the true spirit cave? Chapter 958. This silver pearl was formed from the last essence left behind by the ancestors of Jinling and was then condensed by this amazing formation. It was like a treasure that had been refined using special methods, and it contained the pure yang qi that Lu Ping was very familiar with. Although most of the ancestors of Jinling who were buried in the hundreds of tombstones in this cave were at the early Dharma stage, this did not stop them from using various methods to cultivate and nurture a stream of pure yang qi in order to break through the thunder trial of the mid-Dharma stage. Although this stream of pure yang qi was ultimately unable to help them pass through the thunder trial, they still left this purest stream of pure yang qi behind so that their descendants could benefit from it. Furthermore, not all of these Laozu who had passed away were early Dharma adepts. Although there were very few mid-Dharma adepts and even late Dharma adepts, the pure yang qi within the essence left behind by these Laozu who had gone through the thunder trial was far beyond that of early Dharma adepts. Although this pure yang qi was extremely small and weak, and could not even compare to the pure yang qi that Lu Ping had cultivated and absorbed multiple times when he was still at the core forging stage, when all this pure yang qi was gathered together, the pure yang qi within the pure yang pearl made Lu Ping's heart skip a beat. Just as the formation formed by the hundreds of tombstones in the true spirit cave was activated by Lu Ping's divine will, on the top of Tianling Mountain, as the true guardian of the true spirit cave, celestial phenomenon Laozu suddenly woke up. The 100 ancestors cry. He had actually touched the spirits of the ancestors of Jinling. What a great blessing! The only question was what kind of treasure this kid would obtain from it. Just as Lu Ping was wondering what to do with the pure yang pearl, a small hand suddenly reached out from Lu Ping's back and grabbed the pure yang pearl in Lu Ping's palm. Lu Ping turned around and saw Linglong's big watery eyes staring at Lu Ping's palm. Her chubby little mouth was biting the fingers of her other hand, and her delicious saliva was still flowing down. Her other hand was timidly trying to grab the pure yang pearl in Lu Ping's palm. Just as Linglong's little hand was about to grab the pure yang pearl, he heard Linglong suddenly cry out in pain, "Ouch!" A majestic rock descended from the sky. Its two claws grabbed onto Linglong's two pigtails and pulled it back with all its might. It almost pulled Linglong on her butt. "Stinky bird, you actually dared to take advantage of me when I was unprepared." Linglong opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of saliva. The sky full of spiritual rain drenched the rock. The rock flapped its wings and was about to dive down towards the pure yang pearl in Lu Ping's hand. However, the sky full of spiritual rain made the rock's wings heavy. It wanted to shake off the raindrops on its body, but it couldn't do so. This dive did not land on Lu Ping's palm and instead smashed into the ground, making it look extremely miserable and wailing. Lu Ping looked at Linglong's saliva dripping down and now such a big mouthful of spiritual rain. His heart felt like it was cutting a piece of meat. It was extremely regretful. These were all top-notch treasures. Whether it was the saliva or the spiritual rain, Linglong had swallowed countless spiritual liquids and spiritual wines that Lu Ping had concocted for her over the years, and had been nurtured in the spiritual veins several times. Not to mention the tears in her mouth, even if Linglong peed, it would be an extremely impressive spiritual material in the eyes of many alchemists in the cultivation world. Naturally, Lu Ping would not use these spiritual materials like saliva, but if these things did not overflow from Linglong's body and were nurtured in large spiritual veins or even giant spiritual veins for several years, then it might be a drop or several drops of spiritual materials above the middle grade of heaven stage or above. Lu Ping was about to open his mouth to reprimand these two lawless guys, but suddenly a flash of lightning flashed in front of his eyes. Lu Ping turned around and saw that the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash was like a thievish thief. Taking advantage of the time when Linglong and the Golden Rock were fighting each other, it rushed towards the pure yang pearl. Among all of Lu Ping's magic treasures, although the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash was not the highest quality, it was unintentionally the most mischievous and the most cunning. Although the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash had not yet condensed the Seventh Spirit Cultivation Treasure restriction, its spirituality was almost only below that of Linglong's Wine Cauldron and the Cloud Sail among all of Lu Ping's magic treasures. However, although the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash was cunning, it did not mean that it always succeeded. Puff! The Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash was knocked back, and a layer of black water hung down, blocking the pure yang pearl behind it. A small flag fluttered in the wind, making a fluttering sound. Clang! The Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash was like a frightened rabbit, and all of a sudden, it scurried back. The black profound flag swayed a bit, and gradually withdrew the black light curtain. In front of the pure yang pearl, the thin water flowing sword harmony slashed horizontally. In terms of who was the fiercest, it was still this pair of flying swords. However, this pair of flying swords was not the final victor. A silver light covered the flying swords, and although the two flying swords struggled to break free, they were firmly fixed in midair. A white jade lotus diagram slowly bloomed, and the 12 gentian pearls completely absorbed the pure yang pearl into the gentian great array according to the position of the diagram. But in terms of who was the most powerful, it was still this group of people fighting. Even Linglong and the Golden Rock were blocked outside by them, unable to advance an inch. Lu Ping, who was watching the battle of the magic weapons with interest, finally satisfied his curiosity. He reached out and patted his chest, and a bluish-purple cloud rose from behind Lu Ping. The dragon law idol shuttled back and forth in the cloud, and from time to time revealed scales and claws, giving the feeling of a divine dragon showing its head but not its tail. However, this was already enough. The moment the dragon law idol appeared, Linglong grabbed the wine cauldron and put herself in it from top to bottom. The golden rock turned into a multicolored auspicious cloud, as if to flatter the dragon law idol, making the dragon law idol look even more sacred. If the artifact spirit of this Thunder Tribulation spirit treasure was already like this, then the other mystic treasures were even more so. The Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash flashed with lightning and was about to flee. But from the cloud where the Dharma dragon was, an even more powerful lightning struck down from the sky. The 7 treasures thunder calabash trembled for a moment before it staggered and flew into the purplish-blue cloud. Lu Ping couldn't help but feel a sense of heroism from the calabash, which made him laugh. Just as the 7 treasures thunder calabash flew to the edge of the cloud and seemed to be hesitating whether to enter or not, a golden dragon claw stretched out from the cloud and grabbed the 7 treasures thunder calabash. Immediately after, the entire cloud and mist flashed with various colors of lightning, and a joyful dragon roar came from the cloud and mist. This was clearly not the first time this kind of game had happened, and Lu Ping had long since become accustomed to it. When he looked again, the thin water-flowing sword had already hidden to the side, and the water control flag's pole was inserted into the ground. The life gentian formation had also released the seal on the pure yang pearl. From afar, it looked like the dragon law idol wanted to use the pure yang pearl to protect it. The dragon claw flicked out again, and the 7 treasures thunder calabash was thrown out. Then, the cloud and mist rolled, and a huge dragon head emerged from within. It looked at the pure yang pearl, and then it opened its mouth and sucked. The pearl slowly rose into the air and flew towards the dragon law idol's mouth. However, just as the pure yang pearl was about to fall into the dragon law idol's mouth, at this moment, the pure yang pearl seemed to realize that something was wrong. The pearl moved, and the direction of the dragon law idol's mouth was suddenly deviated, and it went around the side of the dragon law idol's mouth. The dragon law idol turned around and pounced towards the pure yang pearl, and its golden body suddenly lit up more than half of the cloud and mist. However, this pearl seemed to have a high spirituality. It had just been formed by the formation, and its spirituality was still in a state of confusion. Now that it was about to be swallowed by the dragon law idol, its spirituality was immediately stimulated, and it began to flee in all directions. This pearl had a great attraction to the dragon law idol, and it was precisely because of this that Lu Ping summoned the dragon law idol from the heart space. The Dharma form of dragon had also instinctively realized this. Even without Lu Ping's deliberate command, it had already chased after the bead from head to tail. The cloud and mist around it kept the dragon law idol hidden within, making it impossible for the pure yang pearl to know where the dragon law idol would pounce from. Even so, the pure yang pearl continued to circle around the avatar dragon with its agility. Lu Ping, who was watching from the side, was dumbfounded. Wasn't this a typical trick of a dragon playing with a pearl? But no matter how he looked at it, it looked more like a pearl playing with a dragon. The dragon law idol and the pure yang pearl were having fun chasing each other in midair. Suddenly, Lu Ping felt his clothes being tugged by someone. When Lu Ping looked down, he just happened to see Linglong's pitiful little face. "Master, Linglong wants that pearl." "As long as it's 1/3, no, half of it, Linglong is confident that she can survive the second lightning tribulation and become a second tribulation spiritual treasure." As soon as Linglong's voice fell, the magic cloud that had been thrown off by the dragon law idol turned back into a golden rock. It flapped its wings and landed on Lu Ping's shoulder, saying, "Master, the golden rock doesn't need half, just 1/3 will be enough to survive the lightning tribulation. The rest can be used by Master." When Linglong heard this, she immediately became angry and said, "Stupid bird, you are talking nonsense. Your aptitude is not as good as mine. You think you can survive the second lightning tribulation with just 1/3 of the pearl's pure yang qi? When the time comes, it's a small matter if you are struck to death by lightning, but it will be a pity to lose Master's pure yang qi." When the golden rock heard this, all the feathers on its body stood up. It said, "I am a great rock spiritual treasure, how can I not be as good as the pure yang qi that Master obtained by chance?" When the two spiritual treasures quarreled, the other magic treasures that were originally ready to move could not speak. However, Lu Ping could also feel the spiritual nature of these magic treasures expressing their desire for pure yang qi. In particular, the 13 magic treasures gave Lu Ping a clearer feeling. Just when Lu Ping did not know how to deal with it, his body shook. When he looked up, he saw that the pure young pearl had finally been pressed under the claw of the dragon law idol. It then opened its mouth and with a gulp, swallowed the whole pure young pearl. Ling Long and the golden rock suddenly went crazy. The other magic treasures seemed to be venting their dissatisfaction. The flying swords hummed, the formation map trembled, and the black flag made a sound. Only the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash, which was originally the most active, was suspended in the air like a good baby. After the Fa Xiang swallowed the pure young pearl, it looked at the mystic treasures on the ground proudly and roared at them. Then, Lu Ping's ears became quiet again. Chapter 959. Ever since the Great War of Frost Island and the Great War of the Deep Sea Demon region, although Mo Luo had not completely disappeared from the North Sea, his momentum was much smaller than the previous great calamities. Many cultivators thought that this time, Mara's catastrophe might be because the North Sea was lucky not to have to deal with many Mara. After the 2 large-scale annihilation battles between humans and demons, Mara's momentum was naturally greatly reduced, and he was not too dangerous. This was also the first time that God had shown favor to the barren North Sea. Some cultivators thought that this was just a prelude to another large-scale outbreak of Mara's catastrophe, and that the previous small victory was nothing. Although there were all kinds of speculations, there was no doubt that the traces of Mara's large-scale appearance in the North Sea had indeed become very few. However, Mo Luo's disappearance did not cause the entire North Sea to calm down. Instead, it became even more torturous. Humans and demons were fighting, and the giant whale demon clan and the primordial giant crocodile clan were also fighting within the demon clan. Among the humans, the 9 major sects were fighting like wildfire. Even forces from the East Sea and the Middle Earth joined in one after another. Since the Battle of Jinling's Water Sword Fairy, perfected Lu Xianping, on Frost Island 10 years ago, there had been very little news of him in the North Sea cultivation world. However, 5 years ago, someone had seen perfected Lu Xianping on Tianling Mountain, but since then, perfected Lu Xianping had disappeared again. It had been 10 years since then. There had long been rumors in the North Sea cultivation world that perfected Lu had gone into seclusion to break through to the Dharma phase as soon as possible, but most North Sea cultivators did not believe this rumor. This was because there were too many difficulties and obstacles during the breakthrough from the peak of the core forging realm to the Dharma phase. Regardless of how long it had been since perfected Lu Xianping had broken through the peak of the core forging realm, it seemed to be no more than 30 or 40 years. It was not easy to accumulate enough foundation to help him break through to the Dharma phase in such a short period of time. Furthermore, even if perfected Lu Jinren really had accumulated enough foundation in his cultivation, how could he not condense his own special ability when he advanced to the Dharma manifestation stage with his strength that was unparalleled among the cultivators of his generation? If one wanted to inscribe inscriptions on their Dharma idol and condense the divine ability seed, one had to first condense the divine ability talisman in the core space when one was at the peak of the core forging stage. This was not something that could be done in a short period of time. Furthermore, with perfected Lu Xuanping's temperament, it was likely that even one natal divine ability would not be enough to satisfy him. In order to condense at least 2 natal divine abilities, how many divine ability talismans would perfected Lu Xianping need to condense in the core space? Not only that, but perfected Lu Xianping, in short, many people came up with many reasons to explain that perfected Lu Xianping, who was Jinling, was far from reaching the Dharma stage. In the past 10 years, apart from the mixed mineral vein incident in the Northwest Sea, the first thing that attracted attention was the reopening of the 7-star Grotto Heaven after just over 100 years. The reason why the Grotto Heaven opened this time was not because it opened again in a short period of time, but because the cultivators who entered the Grotto Heaven were not only from the North Sea. There were disciples from various sects in the Middle Mainland and the East Sea. Even after the Grotto Heaven closed, some people saw cultivators from the South Sea. And this time, the discovery and harvest of the cultivators from the various sects in the 7-star Grotto Heaven also amazed the major forces. Who said that the North Sea was barren? Just the treasures in the 7-star grotto heaven were enough to make the cultivators of the major forces salivate. First, the cultivators from the Lu family, the #1 alchemy family in the Middle Mainland, and the disciples of the North Sea's Liao family worked together to destroy the famous dangerous Golden Canyon in the 7-star grotto heaven. They found a large number of spirit herbs, poisonous herbs, and various poisonous creatures in the canyon. Many of them were even extinct or about to be extinct in the cultivation world, so their value was naturally very high. And in the center of the Golden Canyon, they even found traces of the meteorite original liquid and the wonder nectar. Unfortunately, it seemed that someone else had beaten them to it. This made the cultivators from the Lu family very angry. Next, the cultivators from the Heavenly Moon sect. They somehow found out about the existence of the purple crystal wasps in the Sea of Flowers in the 7-star grotto heaven. However, the Sea of Flowers was not like the Golden Canyon. If one wanted to enter the Sea of Flowers to obtain the purple crystal honey, purple crystal wasp's eggs, and even the purple crystal wasp's king, they would have to face thousands of purple crystal wasps in the Sea of Flowers. And this was not good news for the cultivators in the 7-star grotto heaven, whose cultivation could only reach the peak of the blood condensation realm at most. Just when the cultivators from the Heavenly Moon sect paid a huge price and braved the attacks of countless purple crystal wasps to break through a few hives, they found that the purple crystal wasps in the hive seemed to have sensed it. Not only did they remove all the wasps' eggs, but there were also only a few drops of purple crystal royal jelly left. Only a large amount of purple crystal honey seemed to have not been processed in time. Even so, this kind of harvest was extremely precious to the cultivators from the Heavenly Moon sect, especially the half bottle of purple crystal royal jelly that had been carefully collected in these hives. This made the cultivators from the Heavenly Moon sect even more excited. Then, the news that Xianling sect and the Crystal Palace had teamed up to find a medium-sized spirit stone mine in an extremely dangerous place spread like wildfire in the 7-star grotto heaven. Cultivators from all over the grotto heaven swarmed over. Xianling sect and the Crystal Palace fought fiercely with the cultivators from the other sections. In the end, because they were outnumbered, they had no choice but to compromise. The cultivators from the other sects all dug holes in the mine, riddling the entire mine with holes. No one knew if the mine could be restored the next time the grotto heaven opened. Although Xianling sect and the Crystal Palace could not stop the cultivators from destroying the mine, they could only firmly occupy the best mining spots and compete with the other sects in digging faster. Naturally, these two sects benefited the most. Unfortunately, the cultivation of the cultivators in the grotto heaven was restricted. Otherwise, they only needed to inform the sect's Dharma idol, Laozu, to bring a grotto heaven magic treasure, and they could move the entire spirit stone mine into the grotto heaven and bring it back to the sect. There were quite a few dangerous places in the 7-star grotto heaven. In these dangerous places, many cultivators had died. There were even some core forging cultivators who had sealed their cultivation. As for how many dangerous places there were in the 7-star grotto heaven, even the sects of the North Sea couldn't tell. Some said there were 9, some said there were 10, and some said there were as many as 12. However, this time, the 7-star grotto heaven opened. Perhaps it was because the sects were well prepared, or because the cultivators from the outside world were attracted, they made breakthroughs in the exploration of several dangerous places. The core of several dangerous places were discovered by the cultivators from the various sections. The last and most exciting part was the opening of the 7-star palace in the 7-star grotto heaven. This time, the treasures that flew out of the 7-star palace were no longer the usual number of 49, but 63. This made the cultivators from the various sects very happy and full of rewards. In this competition, Jinling once again surpassed the sects including the Crystal Palace of the East Sea, the Carefree sect, the Lu family of the Central Plains, and the Heavenly Moon sect. In particular, the disciples and nominal disciples of the water sword deity, Lu Xianping, joined forces and snatched 4 of the treasures that flew out of the palace. The other disciples of Jinling also joined forces and snatched 5 of the treasures. This made the cultivators from the various sects very jealous. It wasn't that the sects didn't covet the treasures, but Wang Qi's blood condensation swordsmanship had been passed down by the water sword deity. In the seven-star grotto heaven, only cultivators at the peak of the blood condensation realm could fight against him. In addition, he was a core forging perfected master and could leave the seven-star grotto heaven at any time. In addition, he had the help of 3 powerful nominal disciples who were also at the core forging stage. The cultivators from the various sects could only swallow their anger. After the seven-star grotto heaven, in Tian Xiang, Tian Fan, Tian Shui, Tian Kong, Tian Lu, and Tian Ling, 5 Dharma adepts, gathered together in Tian Xiang's cave on Tian Ling Mountain. Does this mean that the number of treasures that the seven-star palace spat out is 7 to 9? Tian Ling Laozu nodded. That's right, it is 7 to 9. Our disciples have gained quite a lot this time. There are quite a few extraordinary treasures that have been handed over to the Elixir Pavilion, the Crafting Hall, and the Purple Talisman Pavilion. Tian Xiang sighed. We've already broken through 9 danger zones. I wonder when the seven-star grotto heaven will open again. When that time comes, we'll break through a few more danger zones. I hope some of us can wait until then. Beside him, Tian Lu couldn't help but say, Senior brother, what we've planned is really unimaginable. It's such a pity to waste the mountain and river cauldron just because of a possible guess. It should be right. At this moment, Ancestor Tian Fan suddenly said, after all, it's a guess left behind by Ancestor Great Ginseng in the past. The jade slips our sect has collected from Fei Ling Mountain over the past several millennia have confirmed Ancestor Great Ginseng's guess. Moreover, the Fei Ling sect has clearly been carrying it out in the past. Haven't some of the secrets discovered in the treasured ship proved it as well? But what if it fails? Tian Lu Laozu still felt heartache for the mountain and river cauldron. That was a cauldron that had condensed 3 treasures. However, Tian Lu Laozu also knew that his words were pointless. If it was him, he would also not hesitate to give up this cauldron. Tian Lu Laozu's goal was to make this matter more meticulous and not waste a cauldron that could be used as the sect's treasure. However, the Na Chuan cauldron in little brat Lu's hands is not bad. In the future, it might be possible for it to reach the same level as the mountain and river cauldron. Tian Shui Laozu also said, I don't think it's a problem of whether it's wrong or not. Instead, it's a problem of whether our sect can swallow such a huge benefit with our current strength. The moment our sect plans to obtain this item, it will definitely cause a huge commotion. I'm afraid that the other sects won't just watch without lifting a finger, and our sect will be powerless to deal with it. Tian Fan Laozu waved his hand and said, let's put this problem aside for now. The seven-star paradise will open again in at least 100 years or even longer. When the 12 danger zones are all broken through, who knows how many times the seven-star paradise will open again. At that time, perhaps this matter will be handed over to Tian Lin or even Tian Ping to complete. At this moment, Lu Ping, who was known as Tian Ping Laozu by the other Laozu disciples, was running out of the refining hall with Chen Lian. Cough cough, cough cough cough, we finally succeeded. Hee hee, ha ha ha. Chen Lian squatted at the entrance of the refining hall and started laughing crazily. How could he still have the image of a grandmaster? On the contrary, he scared the blacksmiths and cultivators who were entering and exiting the refining hall. Although Lu Ping's face was also filled with exhaustion, the excitement in his eyes couldn't be concealed. He said, I didn't expect that in just a few days since you became a grandmaster refiner, the cauldron's treasures were actually carved onto the Na Chuan cauldron so easily. Chapter 960. Easy, what easy? Looking at the 2 famous figures of Zhenling's sect squatting on the steps in front of the artifact refining hall and laughing maniacally without a care for their image, all the other cultivators who entered and exited the artifact refining hall avoided them as far as they could. The two of them obviously realized that it was inappropriate to be here. Just now, it was only because the two of them had worked together for several months and finally succeeded in engraving the second treasure restriction on the Na Chuan cauldron, making the Na Chuan cauldron a magic treasure cauldron that condensed two treasure restrictions. For Chen Lian, condensing a treasure restriction on a pill furnace was much more difficult than refining a spirit-nurturing magic treasure, not to mention the second treasure restriction on the Na Chuan cauldron. The two of them stood up tiredly and were about to leave, and Lu Ping happened to see Hu Lili rushing over to the refining hall. Chen Lian waved his hand and turned to leave. He had not solved the problem of installing a large spatial magic treasure on the treasured ship, but his refining skills had improved greatly over the years. If it wasn't for Lu Ping pulling him out of the refining room at the back of Tianling Mountain and asking him to make a magic treasure cauldron, even if it was Tianjiang Laozu's order, he might not have come out from under the sea cliff at the back of Tianling Mountain. Hu Lili had also rarely left the back of the sea cliff these years. All the affairs on Huangli Island had been handed over by Lu Ping to his eldest disciple Wang Xuanqi to take care of. What's wrong? When Lu Ping saw Hu Lili rushing over, he thought there was something important, so he quickly asked. Hu Lili's expression was a little strange. Senior brother Xianwei asked me to look for you. Xianwei? Lu Ping was surprised and asked, why is he looking for me? Hu Lili shook her head and said, I don't know, but it seems to be urgent. For the past few days, Lu Ping had been living in seclusion on Tianling Mountain. He didn't even return to Huangli Island as he spent most of his time in seclusion. Very few people could see him, and even if someone wanted to look for him, they would go to Tianling Mountain's Hearing Wave Manor to find Hu Lili. Although Hu Lili had been repairing the treasured ship's formation at the back of the mountain cliff, she would rest every once in a while. Although she had her own cave mansion on Tianling Mountain, compared to Lu Ping's Hearing Wave Mansion, the location and the density of the spiritual qi were far inferior. She simply moved to Hearing Wave Mansion to live. Ever since Lu Ping's Dragon Dharma form obtained the pure Yang Pearl, it did not know why it did not completely refine it. Instead, it became more and more like a toy. Moreover, Lu Ping's divine will could clearly sense that the Dragon Dharma form was transferring the life divine ability rune on the silver-white reverse scale on its throat to the pure Yang Pearl. Ever since it obtained the pure Yang Pearl, the Dragon Dharma form seemed to have gained an additional toy. Lu Ping's divine will could often see the Dragon Dharma form hovering in the expanding purple mist in the core space, chasing and playing with the pure Yang Pearl. After watching it for a long time, Lu Ping could not help but have some understanding. Could it be that the Dragon Dharma form and the pure Yang Pearl were born as one? Or could it be that the pure Yang Pearl was the equivalent of the legendary Dragon Pearl? Although the Dharma power of the dragon had not completely refined the pure Yang Pearl into the Dharma power, the pure Yang Qi contained in the pure Yang Pearl was constantly affecting the Dharma power of the dragon. In fact, in these 5 years, Lu Ping's cultivation level was not increasing, but fluctuating in a strange way. The reason for this was because of the influence of the pure Yang Pearl. After Lu Ping entered the Dharma form stage from Fei Ling Mountain, because of the influence of the pure Yang Soul, Lu Ping's cultivation level skyrocketed. The Dharma form that had shrunk due to condensing the life divine ability had once again returned to 3.5 feet. However, in the year after obtaining the pure Yang Pearl in the True Spirit Grotto Heaven, because of the constant influence of the pure Yang Pearl, the original 3.5 feet Dharma form had shrunk by 1 foot. After that, as the Dragon Dharma form refined the pure Yang Qi that had dissipated from the pure Yang Pearl, the Dharma form returned to 3.5 feet. In the next 4 years, Lu Ping's Dharma form continued this process, going back and forth from 3.5 feet. Although his cultivation level did not increase at all, Lu Ping could feel that his body had undergone an extremely obvious change. Lu Ping felt that his cultivation level was like a pile of soil, while the pure Yang Qi that had dissipated from the pure Yang Pearl was like water. After adding water to the tall pile of soil, although its volume continued to shrink, the pile of soil itself became more solid. On the surface of the pure yang pearl, as the dragon dharma form inscribed the life divine ability on the reverse scale, the pure yang qi that had been dissipated from the pure yang pearl became less and less. Originally, when the dharma form played with the pure yang pearl, the pure yang qi that had been dissipated from the dharma form would be constantly absorbed and refined by the dharma form. Furthermore, this was extremely beneficial to the few spirit treasures that were swimming around the dharma form. This was especially so for the Thunder 7 Treasures gourd. After successfully condensing the 7th treasure, it had originally been unable to advance due to the lack of rare items. Now, with the help of the pure yang qi, for some reason, it had directly crossed this hurdle and become a spirit-nurturing treasure. This caused Lu Ping to click his tongue in wonder, but at the same time, he could not understand why. Could it be that the pure yang qi could replace those rare items? However, even if it could be replaced, the price was too high. The pure yang qi was a treasure that many early Dharma adepts could only refine and condense in their entire lives. It was much more precious than any mid-tier or upper-tier rare items. On the 5th year, as the pure yang pearl emitted less and less qi, Lu Ping could already feel that his Dharma form seemed to have reached a bottleneck state. The cultivation level would no longer fluctuate. At this time, Lu Ping realized that the entire dragon Dharma form seemed to have become one. Originally, because Lu Ping had merged various kinds of flood dragon bloodlines, the Dharma form had more or less had more traces of being chiseled. At this time, at least in Lu Ping's eyes, the Dharma form now looked more like a dragon, or rather, more like a dragon's charm. On the way, Lu Ping and Hu Lili realized that spiritual master Xianwei was actually anxiously pacing back and forth at the entrance of Lu Ping's cave abode in Tianling Mountain. As soon as he saw Lu Ping appear, spiritual master Xianwei was instantly overjoyed and said, "Junior Lu, you've made me look for you." Lu Ping saw his anxious look, so he smiled and said, "Senior brother Xianwei, you haven't gone out to look for mineral veins recently?" Spiritual Master Xuanwei's face turned red, then he smiled bitterly and said, "Junior brother Lu, please don't laugh at me anymore. Ever since I received the few jade scrolls that you gave me, I've been working very hard. These 5 years have all been spent on this." Lu Ping smiled slightly. Previously, Hu Lili had already told him that spiritual master Xianwei was right. These few years, it was said that he had been studying something in his own cave abode. According to him, he had been studying the legacy left behind by the mineral prospector. However, this wasn't because he was willing, but because ever since Shi Xianling and Xian Yong teamed up to tease him, no one in Jinling believed him anymore. Therefore, in these 5 years, he had pleaded several times to join a team to explore the sea. However, without the halo of a mineral prospector, who would be willing to bring along a coward who would run away at the first sign of danger. Spiritual Master Xianwei also once claimed that his skill in mineral prospecting had greatly improved, and he was no longer the dabbler from before. However, this person lied too much. Even if he told the truth, no one would believe him. In fact, as long as spiritual master Xianwei could reveal the news that Lu Ping had passed the mineral prospector's legacy to him, with the title of Water Sword Fairy, he could completely make many of his fellow disciples in Jinling believe him. However, just like how many cultivators in the same sect asked him to reveal the mineral prospector's legacy that he was studying for everyone to see, spiritual master Xianwei didn't dare to reveal this news at all. Whether it was the Crystal Palace's mineral prospector's legacy or the mention of Lu Ping's name, it would be extremely easy for people to easily recall the death of LV Shuheng, Laozu, and the Crystal Palace's mineral prospector's death in the Northwest Sea. Spiritual Master Xianwei was timid, but it didn't mean that he was stupid. On the contrary, he was extremely smart. When Lu Ping passed the Crystal Palace's mineral prospector's legacy to him, spiritual master Xianwei already knew how big of a trouble he was carrying. Therefore, he could only look for Lu Ping's help now because he also knew that since the Heaven Spirit Sect Master had instructed him to pass this legacy to him, it also meant that he hoped that he could inherit this legacy. This kind of unorthodox and extremely useful legacy, the Heaven Spirit Sect Master definitely wouldn't let it be covered in dust. Spiritual Master Xianwei hesitated for a moment and said, "Actually, I'm looking for Junior Brother Lu because of the Northwest Mineral Vein." He already knew that the incident in the Northwest Sea was obviously caused by this junior brother in front of him. All these years, Junior Brother Lu had been hiding his strength and biding his time, living in seclusion. It wasn't that he didn't have the intention to avoid arousing suspicion. Now that he was still looking for Spiritual Master Xianwei with the matter of the Northwest Sea, he was afraid that it would be extremely difficult to convince him. However, Spiritual Master Xianwei was in a difficult position now. If he wanted to change his current situation, the quickest way was the mineral vein in the Northwest Sea. As expected, when Lu Ping heard that it was about the Northwest Mineral Vein, he frowned first. Daoist Profound Wei knew that the situation wasn't good with a single glance, and he hurriedly said, "Junior Brother Lu, listen to me finish. There isn't just a single mixed vein in the Northwest Sea area, and according to the trend of the vein, there are surely other branches concealed within 250 kilometers of this vein. Moreover, there's more than one." Lu Ping was stunned when he heard this, and then he looked at Spiritual Master Xianwei with a trace of suspicion. It wasn't because Lu Ping had an opportunity in the Northwest Sea at this moment, but it was because Lu Ping really didn't quite trust Spiritual Master Xuanwei's judgment. Spiritual Master Xianwei was observant, so he naturally knew what Lu Ping was thinking in his heart. So he sighed and said, "Since you and Sect Master Laozu have passed the Ore-seeking Master's inheritance to me, then you surely hope that this inheritance can be of some use. If you don't even give me a chance to prove it, then you might as well take this inheritance back." Lu Ping knew that what he said was reasonable, so he thought for a moment and said, "All right, I'll personally accompany you." Spiritual Master Xianwei was overjoyed when he heard this, and he said, "Don't worry, I'm extremely confident this time, and I'll surely succeed." You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.